Mic check. 1, 2, 3. Mic check. 1, 2, 3. All right, we're live. Hello, all. Welcome to the YouTube channel. Today is Wednesday. As the world turns Wednesday, today is our geopolitics hangout. We got some pretty good things for you lined up for today. Everything what's going on in the Middle East, to Africa, to somewhat all over the world. I'll bring it to you today. Today should be a great show. I think so myself. Looking at the topics for today, as always, the topics for the show will be left down in the description box so you can follow along with us. Just getting everything set up. All right. Um, we should have a somewhat a full panel today. A few people be coming on. Some people made some requests on things to talk about in for the hangout today. Let's see here. Get a few topics up. Let some people come in, then we will get everything started. Okay. Don't forget Mondays is our automation show. Automation Mondays. We talk about automation, artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, and any other technologies dealing with computer science, topics dealing with all topics under that umbrella. Wednesdays is titled As the World Turns. It's our geopolitics. Talk geopolitics on Wednesdays. Everything dealing with geopolitics, what's going on in other countries, um, past events that led to current events, and we try to see where these current events will be going in the future. Um, and Friday we talk about Monday. No, I spoke not. We talk about Monday on Friday, but we talk about Money Fridays. So Fridays is money making Fridays. You talk about crypto, stock markets. Want to try to throw some chart analysis in there, and we have a few people on that really know what they're talking about. Fridays, we have a few people that really know what they're talking about. Wednesdays, and we have a few people that really know what they're talking about on Monday. So Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, same bad channel, same bad time. 8 o'clock Central Time, 8 to 10, 2 hour hangouts. Talk about topics that are current and try to get you all to understand simply what it means and have you all have a better understanding of what's going on in the world. So, as you all know, I've been learning a lot on this channel myself. So, that's about it. Yeah. Mondays, Automation Mondays, as the world turns. Wednesdays, and Money Making Friday. All right, so let me go ahead and get the show started. It's about 5 after. Try to wait a couple minutes. Don't want to start it straight out. Excuse me. All right. Hold on. I gotta get everything ready. Okay, there you go. Now I can share my screen. All right. Our first topic is from presstv.com. This is dated Sunday, June 24th. Syrian forces make gains in Daraa province's eastern countryside. Should really bring the map up also. Syrian government forces have liberated 2 villages in the Daraa province's eastern countryside as they warm up for a major offensive against militants holed up in the region. According to the so-called Syrian Observatory for Human Rights on Saturday, that's a typo, say that the villages of Al-Bustan and Al-Shumaria were liberated during Syrian forces' first advance in the area. The UK-based observatory also noted an ongoing escalation of shelling and clashes in eastern and northeastern parts of Daraa province. Intense Russian airstrikes are hitting towns in Daraa's eastern countryside for the first time since the ceasefire was agreed in southern Syria last year, claimed observatory head Romai Abdel Rahman. Syrian forces also heavily shelled militant-held areas in the towns of Busar al-Harir and al-Hariq in the region and also carried out several airstrikes on the militants. Syria's official news agency, Sana, confirmed the gains, noting the government forces targeted militant-held areas with precise strikes. Last month, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that only Syrian government forces should maintain presence on the Arab country's southern parts. The recapture of Daraa is highly important because it borders the occupied Golan Heights, which Israel has used to treat wounded militants for years. The territory's return to the Syrian government would the territory's return to the Syrian government control will cut the much reported collaboration between Israel and militants and deal a blow to Tel Aviv's plans to annex the Golan Heights. All right, we got another call. How you doing, Mike? How you doing today?
Hey, what's going on, brother?
I'm all right. All right. We Syrian forces has made gains in Daras province, eastern countryside. All right. Now, what does this say? You there?
Are you asking me for my opinion?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yes.
So the Syrian government, Dara is next to the border of the Golan Heights in Jordan. So what the Syrian government wants to do is take that last pocket from, the terrorists. However, Donald Trump actually had the military pull out support for those terrorists in that area, and the goal is to finish off those guys in the last stronghold, which is the south for Syria, as well as take the Golan Heights back as well from Israel.
Now I'm looking at the map and I see Dara right here. It is right next to the Golan Heights. Yeah, I see the Golan Heights here. See the article. It also says in the article that now I did I miss it? No, I did not. I did not miss it. I did. Russia said that only Syria. Okay, last month, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that only Syrian government forces should maintain presence in the Arab countries' southern parts. Now, was that targeted to the U.S. That comment?
No, it's targeted to Iran because Iran has a few bases around Damascus, and the objective was for Iranian soldiers to make their way down to the Golan Heights to take the Golan Heights back away from Israel and put it back in the possession of the Syrian government. So the war is actually working in favor of the Syrian government, despite the fact that they've been bombed multiple times by the Israeli defense forces. it gives them justification to go in to force the terrorists into the Golan Heights so they can go back in there and reclaim the Golan Heights.
Okay, okay, I see what you're saying. Now that you're saying that, it is another point that in the article that was brought up. It was said it's intense Russian airstrikes are hitting towns in Daraa, eastern countryside for the first. Okay, so you said even though they're getting bombed pretty heavily, the purpose is to drive out non-Syrians to take that area and the Golan Heights. Okay.
They can't run across to the Jordanian border because the Jordanian border has been closed officially now. So you'll have civilians trying to make their way out of that area to try to find shelter to get away from the bombing, because the bombing was lethal. I don't know if you saw the video, but if they can flush the terrorists either into the Golan Heights or to the Jordanian border, then what that does is it gives them justification to actually step up the intensity of that area. Well, not the bombs, but the actual occupation of the soldiers. So now you can justify to the Golan Heights, and if you drive them into the Golan Heights, the Syrian government to start making moves, reclaim the Golan Heights to themselves, because legally the Golan Heights actually belongs to Syria and not to Israel, and Israel has been occupying the Golan Heights since 1967.
Okay, so with the bombings, it'll drive Israeli soldiers into the Golan Heights, you're saying?
And no, Syrian soldiers.
Syrian soldiers into the Golan Heights. Okay. Okay. And that will allow Syria to beef up and put more soldiers into the Golan Heights.
Right. Well, they already have some form of United Nations peacekeeping mission in the Golan Heights, but that doesn't really mean anything, because the Golan Heights is a pretty large area. But the point I'm making is that if the terrorists are forced into the Golan Heights and you have Israel, that's probably going to cut the routes for the terrorists to even get into that area. What you have is the Golan Heights now being officially split, and with the Syrian government on the offensive, pushing their way into the Golan Heights, ready to take it back, and Israel on the opposite side waiting for a confrontation to happen. Now, the objective was that if the Iranians were going to come down with the Syrian government and the Russians, then what would happen is you would have a fully engulfed war within the Golan Heights itself. However, they brokered a deal between the Russians and the Iranians and the Syrian government that the Iranians would have to leave Syria or not be in that area if they're going to drive the terrorists into that area to finish off the campaign.
Okay. Iran, just to get my bearings. Okay, that's Iran. All right, just to get my bearings. I don't want to mess up countries. Go back to this area. Okay. Okay, here we go. Okay, I'm understanding. I'm understanding the article. By you explaining, I'm understanding it. And just to go back to the article, according to the so-called that's not the beginning. Yes, it is. According to the so-called Syrian Observer for Human Rights on Saturday, the villages of Al-Bustan and Al-Shumariya were liberated during Syrian forces' first advance in the area. Okay. And that was the sole purpose that sole purpose again was to drive terrorists out this Daraa area into the Golan Heights.
They wouldn't have any choice. Either they surrender, which they're not, which is more than likely they're not going to do, or they run into the Golan Heights, or they run into the Jordanian border that is now officially closed.
It's now officially closed. All right. And the terrorists are who again?
It's ISIS.
ISIS. Okay. Oh, man, they everywhere, aren't they?
There's 120,000, if not 150,000, in the country.
In the country of Syria.
Yeah.
All right, and they're both on the southern border of Syria and up. I know
They're all over the country,
all
all
over the
over.
country. All over the country. Gotcha. Okay. Now, is that the only country? Well, I'm not. I don't want to ask that question because I know the answer, but I'll ask you anyway. What other countries are there? Is ISIS in other than Syria?
Libya, um, Iraq, Afghanistan now. I mean, rumors of ISIS being uh, inside Egypt as well as what do you call it, the Sinai Peninsula.
Okay. Now they are Sunni Muslims, right? The ISIS. They study the Sunni um, version of
No,
Islam. No.
no. If anything, I don't think they're Muslim at all, but they will be considered to be Wahhabi.
Wahhabi. Wahhabi. Wahhabi. Okay. Wahhabi. I know. I saw the documentaries you sent to me about the JP. Am I saying?
YPJ,
Yeah, YPJ and a YPG.
yeah,
the,
YPJ is the women, YPG is the men.
yes, and the they followed the women around, and what's the one? I think the women said that when they captured some, uh, both sides said when they captured some ISIS, they could tell that they had Turkish passports on them or IDs on them, and some were from even from Western Europe. So
Right, right. You had a lot of migrants and whatnot laying in Europe at the time, just awaiting their phone call and waiting for their text message to be sent to Syria.
okay, all right, okay, okay. Any other points on that article?
Um, no, I think that's it.
All right, yeah, make sure this is the one. Now this comes from presstv.com. Sure. Okay. U.S. warns Turkey against S-400 purchase from Russia. This keeps going on. The United States has once again warned Turkey against the purchase of S-400 air defense missile systems from Russia, threatening to impose sanctions on Ankara and also stop delivery of F-35 fighter jets. The U.S. State Department announced on Tuesday that Turkey will be subject to sanctions under a bill Donald Trump signed into law last summer, which seeks to punish companies that do business with Russia's defense industry. We made it clear that if Turkey buys S-400s, there will be consequences. We will introduce sanctions within Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act, or CAATSA. Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs Wes Mitchell said at a Senate Foreign Relations Committee hearing. The S-400 system, whose full name is the Triumph Mobile Multiple Anti-Aircraft Missile System, or AAMS, is an advanced Russian missile system designed to detect, track, and destroy planes, drones, or missiles as far as 402 kilometers away. It has previously been sold only to China and India. On April 3rd, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin said in Ankara that they had agreed to expedite the delivery of S-400 missile systems. The delivery is expected to start between late 2019 and early 2020. The United States has repeatedly of its decisions to buy the S-400 missile batteries from Russia, saying Washington could Ankara with sanctions over such a purchase. The U.S. State Department official added on Tuesday that Washington could also hold off on delivering more Lockheed Martin F-35 Joint Strike Fighter jets to Ankara. We believe that we have the existing legal authorities that would allow us to withhold transfer under certain circumstances, including national security concerns, Mitchell said. Turkey received the first two F-35s for training purposes last week, and the next four deliveries to the country are not expected until 2019. Ankara, which is a NATO member, has been a partner in the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter project, a consortium financing the warplanes since 1999. U.S. senators have opposed F-35's delivery in the light of Ankara's plans to purchase the Russian anti-aircraft missile system. Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu said in a visit to Washington earlier this month that Ankara would not tolerate any pressure regarding the purchase of military equipment from Russia, adding that the delivery of F 35s had not been postponed or delayed. Erdogan also blasted Washington's attempt to block the purchase of S 400s from Moscow. We say that the U.S. is our strategic partner. As our strategic partner, the U.S. should not say we should knock on any door, the Turkish president said earlier this month. Turkey is striving to boost its air defense. I like this. I read this earlier. I like this paragraph right here. Turkey is striving to boost its air defense, particularly when Washington decided in 2015 to withdraw its patriotic surface-to-air missile system from Turkey's border with Syria, a move that weakened Turkey's air defense. Before gravitating toward Russia, the Turkish military reportedly walked out of a 3.4 billion contract for a similar Chinese system. The withdrawal took place under purported pressure from Washington. Ankara's ties with its Western allies in NATO have been strained over a range of issues. Erdogan has been critical for the U.S. for supporting Kurdish groups in Syria that he says are responsible for terror attacks inside Turkey, and also slammed Washington's refusal to hand over Fethullah Gulen, whom Ankara accuses of masterminding a 2016 coup against the Turkish government. Now, this paragraph right here is in my opinion, is very telling, which says Turkey is striving to boost its air defense, particularly after Washington decided in 2015 excuse me, to withdraw its Patriot surface-to-air missile system from Turkey's border with Syria, a move that weakened Turkey's air defense. So, bring up the map. That, in my opinion, that's the other than it said that first deal that they tried to do with China that the U.S. forced them not to do. That whole move in 2015 by Washington to
You still there, Lionel? BGS, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I wonder what happened, Lionel.
Maybe you got a glitch. See if he reboots.
When he reboots, we're gonna lose the whole hangout.
Oh, that's right. Well, not that. No, it actually continues on. If he has to reboot, it'll stay on for like I think it carries on like maybe 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, I think he's mining cryptocurrencies on his machine, probably using up all his CPU. Hey, so what's going on, BGS?
Nothing much. Just seeing what you guys are doing.
Yeah, we're going into the second article right now.
Oh yeah, talking about Turkey.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you already knew it was coming. So.
Well, if they put sanctions on Turkey, then what that means is that that's one step. That's the first step to war. And now that Erdogan has
war with who?
With Turkey.
Why would they go to war with Turkey?
Because if we're going by the article is stating that either Turkey chooses the F-35 or or the S-400. You choose the S-400, then we'll put sanctions on you.
Okay.
Choose the F-35, then we won't put sanctions on you. But
they
what
already,
it sounds like to me
they
is
already,
that
they already knew that was going to happen because they started moving their gold. So they already knew that was going to happen. So, but why would they go to war with Turkey? It doesn't make sense.
more than likely to take down Erdogan and reassert themselves in that region.
It would along right next to the Russians. Are you kidding?
Well, they'll just tear the contracts up. But what I'm saying is that what it looks like these snap elections is that Erdogan knows that something's about to happen, so he has to reaffirm his position within the country itself. And he seems like he has 80% support.
Yeah. Well, yeah. What I'm saying is, the United States going into Turkey is they are not Syria. Okay, Turkey is not Syria, and that is that is a very tough fight, and that is
they'll use the Kurds like they're using them right now. And the Kurds have been although they've taken a lot of losses going against Turkey. Turkey has taken a lot of losses this time around too. So they're a formidable force as it stands, and I think that's what Turkey is worried about, that the United States would use the Kurds to bust right into Turkey's border.
That would be if I were advising the United States, I would tell them to leave that alone. You don't want that.
Well, it's happening right now. So the Kurds have a good portion of U.S. military hardware, which is your M113A APCs with ATGMs attached to it. Yeah. All the heavy, well, not the heavy drones, but the mid to light drones, all going against Turkey's military right now.
This won't end well. I would advise the United States not to do this one. This will not end well. Like the Ukraine didn't end well. This is not going to end well. I'd advise them not to even do that. They should have never messed with Syria. Was a mistake, you know. And basically now you're gonna Syria's already a mistake. Libya you could kind of get away with. Syria was a mistake because of the blowback you're gonna see in Europe. If you go into Turkey, you start a war in Turkey, and that stuff really starts to spread out, and it has the ability to spread out, then the EU is going to get serious blowback if you do it in Turkey.
It also crushes their ability to get into the EU itself, because they are also at odds with Greece, right? So Greece actually is holding a lot of those potential.
You got to remember, the EU is finished, man. Why would you get into the EU? It's a sinking ship.
Well, that's what Turkey's been bidding for.
Yeah, they've been bidding for it when it was viable. They were bidding for it, but the EU is a sinking ship. They're going to go Turkey, but basically they're going to go. They're going to the SCO. They're not going to the EU. When eventually that's where they're going to wind up. They're going to basically that's going to be the winning team in that area eventually. If I was Turkey, the last place I would try to get into the EU. If you look at Greece and Italy and Spain and Portugal and all these other EU countries that are in trouble, financially in trouble, why would you sign up for that?
Well, they will be the strongest bloc within the EU itself. I guess that was the consideration. However, as it stands right now, the soldiers that actually were involved in the coup attempt against Erdogan in 2016 actually landed inside Greece, which is a NATO partner, and the Greek government won't turn them over to the Turks.
Of course not.
Right.
Of course not. For considerations to be named later. In other words, I'm sure there's some money exchanged or some debts canceled on the part of Greece for Greece to actually do that.
Lionel, can you hear us?
Yeah. I don't know how long I was out.
Oh, good 3-4 minutes.
Okay.
Sounds like would it crash or what?
Yeah, my internet has been jumping. It been jumping off and on. So she got stuck in one of them.
Yeah, but if it were me, and if I was Turkey, the last place I would be trying to go to is to the EU. The EU's been shunning them for 20 years. Why would a Turkey, when the EU's in trouble, why would they try to join now? Would make sense.
Well,
Why?
the only thing,
what would it benefit them?
the only wild card I see Turkey having is the South Stream pipeline coming from Russia into Bulgaria, through Turkey into Bulgaria. But that's the only trump card that they really have in terms of
in other words, what is the EU going to give Turkey that they can't get from elsewhere?
They've been giving them billions of dollars or billions of euros, for this whole migrant thing. So it sounds to me like, at least from what the stuff I've seen Erdogan doing in politics, is they've been blackmailing the EU to get money.
Yeah.
I don't know if the EU is gonna play that game anymore with them, because Germany took their missile battery out of Turkey a couple years ago, right around the just before the coup. So
yeah, of course they did. In other words, they've already switched sides. Why would they join the EU? And they've already switched sides. It doesn't make sense. Unless if you want to be part of the EU, you'd have stayed in NATO, or you'd have made you'd have made the Americans in NATO happy. Because if you join the EU, you're basically inside of NATO. It doesn't make sense to be out of NATO or be at odds with the United States and be part of the EU. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make common sense. You've already you've already basically flipped. You're going to buy Russian hardware. You moved your gold. You've all but become an observer status for the for the SCO. Why would you join the EU?
Yeah, it doesn't sound like NATO's going to be around too much longer either, with this whole EU army being propped up.
If you're okay, let me put it to you this way: if you're Erdogan and NATO tried to plot a coup against you, how friendly would you be to NATO?
Not too friendly. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
I mean,
what sense? Why would you? If somebody tried to knife you in the back, why would you still be their friend?
Hey, well, it don't sound too friendly. After something happened, it wouldn't be too friendly.
Yeah, they were unhappy with Erdogan, and they thought they could actually pull a coup, and they forgot that the Russians were listening in, and the Russians told them ahead of time, and it didn't work. The Russians blew up the plan before it actually happened. And once the coup didn't work, and Erdogan find out who was behind it, who he knew was behind it was NATO, the NATO generals. Once that happens, you basically, you gave him no choice except to switch sides. Unless you've heard of solemn promise by NATO not to keep him in power and not to try to push him out of power again.
Well, it also sounds like Putin has made some concessions with Erdogan, about Syria and Iraq, and
he's helping them.
Right.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, he's helping them. So that piece flipped as soon as it happened. We just shook our heads and said that's almost as bad as trying to annex Crimea through Ukraine. So that's just so stupid.
Talking about the coup.
Yeah. Remember they tried to get on the whole Ukrainian war is about annexing, taking Crimea away from the Russians. That's all it was about.
It's also about Ukraine joining NATO.
Ah, man, come on, man. Think.
Well,
strategically, okay. If the thing between you and the Middle East, in fact, controlling the Middle East is the Russians, and the Russians only black water, basically Black Sea or Mediterranean port is in Crimea. What is the first thing you go after?
Crimea.
You go to Crimea because it takes away their port. They don't have any. That's the only one they have. So you logically.
But the access to the Black Sea.
The Black Sea to the what? To the Mediterranean. If not, they have to sell all. If not, they have to sell all the way around. We're talking about a couple of thousand miles around to get to the Mediterranean and get to that area of influence.
Which is the whole point of the Syrian naval port in Tartus. That
Well,
was
now,
the whole point of them going.
well, that's true. But I'm saying at the time, the thing is, the thing is, if you think strategically, then you basically, that's like I'm saying, you look at the chessboard and then you can predict. You can actually see what the next move is. The next
Right.
move is, and the next move, the Ukrainian war, when it happened, said, okay, man, I said, I don't believe they're gonna even try this. And I said, and then as soon as it happened, the Ukrainian war happened. What did Putin do? Putin came in, took over Crimea, and after that, he didn't give a shit about what happened to Ukraine.
Well, keep in mind that in 2013, Poland shared the NATO framework of security with the Ukraine itself. So the Ukrainian government had taken on the whole NATO security framework without being a NATO member. So the objective was to actually get Ukraine to join NATO. But the Russians had Putin had already said that if Ukraine was to join NATO, then we would bomb it immediately.
So it was an obvious move, and it didn't work because the Russians hadn't said poo about it since. They really don't care
about.
They don't. The Russians have not cared about the Ukraine since they got Crimea. Within the first month or so, they haven't said poo about Ukraine since. And basically, the Ukrainian whatever crisis was after it burnt itself out, you haven't really even heard about it very much.
Actually, it's been in the news quite frequently in Russian news. If you look at Russian news, but the problem is that they want to break Ukraine apart, from the Donbass and the other regions, so that they can have, and I'm saying they being NATO, so that they can have that piece of Ukraine to themselves, and then say that, okay, Ukrainian government wants to join NATO, we're going to bring NATO in, and then leave those other regions, the Donbass and the other regions, autonomous, so that they can bring NATO right to the doorstep. So the Russians have been sending artillery and PMC, which is private military corporations, into Ukraine to keep the onslaught from coming into the Russian borders, because it's already spilled in.
Yeah, into the Russian borders, but it basically is a nuisance. Basically, United States started a war for nothing, for basically nothing, because they're the objective that they wanted, they didn't get.
I have a question for you all. I'm looking at the map. I know Crimea projects out into the Black Sea, but this area right here, why would Russia need to annex Crimea?
Because that's where the port is, and the port it's a 300-year-old port that Catherine the Great actually put there. The only reason Crimea, after it broke up, was actually annexed to the Ukraine is because it made sense. Okay, they actually annexed, but that port had been there for 300 years since Catherine the Great. That's their only warm water port.
Now, what about this coastline right here? Isn't this coastline part of Russia?
It's not part of Russia. It's part of the Georgian territory. But the problem is that those are all former Soviet states. So a lot of it was set up. Soviet infrastructure was set up there. But as it stands, Russia doesn't really use Soviet frameworks anymore. However, they have the Caspian Sea, which is the ocean that you see right in between, in the middle, which is the Caspian Sea fleet. But the problem, like BGS is saying, is that the port, the port inside the Black Sea is the only one that they use to get out, to have access to right back into Russia. And they would have to go all the way around, to get back in. Russians understand that this is a security issue and they can't afford to lose the Black Sea. But however, they already have the Syrian port in 1973, which is when it was established, because they understood that they needed access to the Mediterranean. So they have Armenia as an airport for their military, so that they can get their planes in and out of Russia without going over Turkey and being shot down. But now that Turkey has become a friendly partner with Russia, they don't really need Armenia anymore, which is why they let the Armenian coup take place and just walked away and decided that they were going to broker a deal with the Turks to have in exchange for the S-400 and the the South Stream pipeline,
Mm-hmm.
that they would actually get a naval port inside Turkey too, which is why the United States is getting flustered about this whole entire deal.
What I'm saying is it's it is a military mistake, and I'm sure that I don't know who got fired over it, but I'd like to know who got fired over it.
Now I understand. I understand that. Okay, since Mike, you said this area is of Georgia territory, and I do understand the other northern areas of Russia are a geographical problem because those areas by the water they freeze up, so you really can't
They
have
have
a naval.
keep in mind that Russia has the best icebreakers in the world, so they've already broken up paths, in that part of the Northern Sea. And they have a military base, a new military base inside the North Pole, so that's already been taken over.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
but this is their only warm water.
Was yeah, that's the warm water port. Catherine Great set up that port in I would say 1787, or maybe it was 1757. I think it was 1787. She actually set up that warm water port, or maybe before that, in where Crimea is right now.
Your date sounds about right.
Yeah, somewhere around there, and so it's been in Russian hands and the Soviet hands for 200 some odd years, and if you want to reduce the Russian Navy's ability to project force in the Mediterranean, go after that port, and they did, because that's where most of the warm water Russian Navy was anyway. It's already there anyway, and the first thing Putin did, he didn't even get in the middle of the Ukrainian war. He went right to Crimea. He said hands off immediately.
All right. Any other points on the S-400s?
I just want to correct that what you said before. I know you were reading it. It's actually the Triumph S-400. That's what it's called.
Okay.
And Erdogan's name is actually Erdogan and not Erdogan.
Erdogan. Yeah. More we go over, more I learn. Erdogan.
Yeah.
I know it's a struggle to read some of that stuff.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, but it's starting to make. I'm sure it's starting to make sense because
the
pieces are starting to drop in.
Yeah, because I read all these articles earlier, and I read them, but as I'm reading them over again, it's starting to sink in more.
Yeah, because remember I think it was like 2-3 weeks ago I was telling you about this, and it was when I saw it was just confirmation.
Okay.
Yeah, just confirmation. I said, okay, yeah, we may, now they're not. The thing is, we already knew what was going on behind the scenes, but the thing is, now the breadcrumb actually drops. Said, boom, okay, now it's a fact.
Okay.
Instead of hinting at it, so now they're actually coming out in the press and saying it. So basically, you have a guess, like a gut feel. The breadcrumb drops in and says, okay, they're heading that direction. You have an opinion, and then you have a theory, and then when the last breadcrumb drops in, okay, now it's a fact. So you're ahead of the game. So you now have a direction, and so basically, so now you look for the next piece to drop in. Like Armenia makes sense because they're letting Armenia go because it's a better. You can trade Turkey, which is a bigger piece, for a smaller piece.
Okay.
Armenia's a small piece, Turkey's a big piece, and right in the middle, it's the gateway to Europe.
Okay. Cool. All right, this is from BBC.com. It's from June 25th. Zimbabwe, Bulawayo blast. 2 died after attack on Mnangagwa. All right, two people injured in Saturday's explosion at a campaign rally in Zimbabwe's second city of Bulawayo have died, a medical official has said. Solwayo Ngwingwa, clinical director of the city's Mopilo Hospital in the city, told AFP other victims have had life-threatening injuries. At least 49 people, including President Emerson Mnangagwa, 2 deputies, were injured in the blast. He said it was an attempt on his life ahead of the July 30th election. This is the first poll since longtime leader Robert Mugabe was forced from power last year. Mr. Mnangagwa has vowed that the attack would not derail the election. He is favored to win the poll, but analysts say he also has enemies, both
Mm-hmm.
for overthrowing his former mentor and for
Mm-hmm.
being a previous enforcer of Mugabe's government. His main rival, Nelson Chamisa, has also condemned the attack, for which there has been no claim for responsibility. The president told state media that an object exploded a few inches away from me, but it's not my time. I am used to these attempts, he added. The names of the dead have not been released, but one is reported to work for the vice president, Costa Constantino Chiwingwa. 8 senior officials suffered non-life-threatening injuries. Video footage from White City Stadium, where the campaign event was being held, shows an explosion happening close to the president as he
Mm-hmm.
leaves the stage after addressing supporters. Police have now offered a reward for information about the suspects. Sources close to the investigation say they believe a grenade was hurled at the event. The BBC's Shingai Nayoka reports from Harare. His spokesman said that while the president was unhurt, Vice President Kembo Buhari suffered a leg injury, while Mr. Vice President Chiwinga received bruises to his face. The campaign rally in Bulawayo was Mr. Mnangagwa's first in the city, which is an opposition stronghold. Now I saw the video. It don't look like it was a grenade. If it was a grenade, more people would have died. I saw the video. Um, yeah, it was a real explosion, but I don't think it was a grenade.
Well, you got various grenades that the military makes. You know, it
It,
doesn't
it,
have to
wa-
be
it,
a
wa-
big explosion.
it wasn't a frag, huh?
No, no, it definitely was not that. I would say that it definitely was not that.
Looks like it might have been like a quarter stick of dynamite that you use for like
Mhm.
fireworks and whatnot.
Yeah.
Um, so my take on this is that whoever is going after these guys, which it could potentially be whoever's at the head of the Commonwealth, try to destabilize the election to get their person in power. Um, they it seems a little radical to actually kill him when the same people who are backing him up are going to be the ones to take his position too. It doesn't make any sense.
Mm-mm. So do you think the way it was done is kind of like amateurish? Is that it might have been just the locals? Because I think I would hope that if the big players are actually in it and actually paid some money, they got somebody that would do a better job.
It's 50-50 on this one, but I'm saying
Mhm.
it could just be a warning shot to him to let him know that if you think about running this, we'll take you out for real. However, it doesn't seem logical to take him out because the people who are backing him are actually going to take his position too. And when you look at the coup, the soft
Mhm.
coup, the
Mhm.
videos of the soft coup, there's nobody in the street, really wailing over Mugabe being tossed out. They didn't, there was no riots in the street or anything like that. So
Yeah. Well,
who's really his opposition?
well, the thing is, before the coup actually happened, who did he talk to? Who did he go see before the coup was actually implemented? He
Beijing.
talked to we talked to Beijing first, and then he talked to the crown second. He talked to them first before he even implemented the coup. Why would they try to kill him? I mean,
I'm
unless.
saying the opposition. I'm saying the opposition to him.
Mm-hmm. So I'm saying, well, like I said, there's not enough breadcrumbs for this one. But
Yeah.
it just on the surface is if this is the best they can do. Kind of
Now,
reminds me of what happened to what is it? Not Sadat. What's to Sadat back in the day?
Me, Egypt.
Yeah, remember Sadat? It was a grenade attack um, by radical people in the army.
I thought it was an AK-47, but
I remember. I thought it was a grenade attack during his presentation.
right. I think it was a military day parade, and he was sitting in the front row, and they went up there and they took him out. But and
Yeah,
that's because he shook hands with and recognized Israel, which
yeah,
was against the policy of the
yeah,
you know
yeah. Yeah, it was a grenade. I do believe it was a grenade attack. It's been so long, but I do believe it was a grenade attack. Same, almost the same thing. It might be his enemies and that were actually loyal to you know
Mugabe.
to Mugabe.
All right, now, so let me get this straight. We're saying there's not enough information, but what we do know, attack was put on Mnangagwa,
Mm-hmm.
which is slated to be the next president of Zimbabwe,
Mm-hmm.
but he was not hit. But now we're speculating to see who was it.
Yeah, we're gonna see
Okay.
who he born on, who benefits, because he's gonna find them. He's gonna
Yeah.
find them.
And whoever benefits is the person that
Yeah, who's behind it?
was right.
He's gonna find them. He's gonna shake some trees, and some leaves are some breadcrumbs gonna fall out that bag.
So, so, so the British and Americans have been supporting the opposition party for a couple of years now, or at least since the land reform was put on the table.
Oh, a couple of years, man. We're talking about 10.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying a couple of administrations, but they have been supporting the opposition for quite some time, and they were the ones putting sanctions on them, and the opposition was supposed to be the ones to take the crown or take the leadership, but that didn't work out too well with this whole soft coup. So there could be CIA and MI6 causing disruption.
Well, he already. One thing is that because me and Cerulli actually talked about this, man, before right after the coup happened, some deals were cut. They already cut deals with the crown, which doesn't make sense unless he's reneging on the deals, because he already talked about giving some of the farmers back, some of the white farmers back land, and a few other things. So he made some concessions. It doesn't make sense to actually for them to take him out.
Okay, who made the deals?
Mnangagwa, before he actually did the coup, he went to the Chinese and he went to the British.
So he went to the Chinese and the British to cut deals, which would give them land, and the already white Zimbabweans there, he would give them back their land.
Some of them, not all of them. Some of them.
The Chinese don't care about the land. It's not for the Chinese. It's not about the land. It's more about the resources like lithium.
Yeah, and in fact, they got a few mining contracts, more mining contracts. The thing is, there were deals cut. We don't know all the deals that were cut, but there were deals cut because it wouldn't make any sense to go talk to them if you were just gonna right before a coup, if you weren't cutting a deal.
To be honest, he sounded like another weak leader, African leader.
No, he's a hatchet man. So he was Mugabe's hatchet man.
No, he's a mad dog, like the general under Trump.
I would say I would say he's closer. He's not crazy like Saddam Hussein, but he's ruthless like Saddam Hussein. He's ruthless. So we have to see when he shakes the tree what falls out.
Any other points on that one?
Not enough information, in my opinion.
Okay. How about you, Mike?
Nope.
All right. This next one is from AlJazeera.com on June 24th. Saudi says 2 Houthi missiles intercepted over Riyadh. Yemen's Houthis have fired a series of missiles in recent months in retaliation to air raids by Saudi Emirati coalition. Saudi Arabia says it has intercepted 2 missiles over the capital, Riyadh, which were launched from rebel-held territory in neighboring Yemen. Yemen's Houthi rebels have fired a series of missiles into the kingdom in recent months in retaliation to air raids by a Saudi Emirati coalition backing government forces in the Arab world's poorest country. At least 6 loud blasts were heard on Sunday, and bright flashes were seen in the sky over Riyadh, a witness told Reuters news agency. Shrapnel was spotted on a street in the diplomatic quarter where most embassies are located and many foreigners live. Saudi Royal Air Defense Forces intercepted and destroyed 2 missiles. Some of the debris of the intercepted missiles landed on residential areas, thankfully without causing any casualties, coalition spokesman Turk al-Maliki said in a statement. Houthi-run media and Birkin missiles were fired at the Saudi Defense Ministry and other targets. The longer the aggression and war continue, the greater our ballistic missile capabilities. Al Mayadeen TV quoted Houthi spokesman Mohammed Abdul Salam as saying, the attack was the first to target Riyadh since the Saudi-led coalition launched an offense last week to capture Yemen's Hudaida port city in the biggest battle of the three-year war aimed at weakening the Houthis by cutting their main supply line. There was a heightened security presence and fire trucks in the diplomatic quarter following Sunday's missile attack, which was the sixth on Riyadh since December. The Western-backed coalition intervened in Yemen's war in 2015 to unseat the Houthis and restore the internationally recognized government in exile. Riyadh has accused the Houthis of using the port to smuggle Iranian-made weapons, including missiles, accusations denied by the group and Tehran. All right, who will first crack at this one?
Were those Scuds, by the way? I think I heard a report there were Scuds.
Yeah, they're Scuds.
Okay.
So Yemen had bought a whole lot of Soviet hardware from North Korea in the 90s, in the late 90s, and they retained a lot of that hardware. Now the problem is, like I think you may know this as well. If you don't use a certain amount of time, then what happens is it goes bad and goes stale, and it can actually blow up on you if you try to use it out of date. So off every piece of artillery that the Houthis were able to grab from the Yemen army's arsenal on the ground. So these ballistic missiles, these Scud missiles, are not. So you fire them in a general location using some basic coordinates, and you hope that it hit it. They don't have any intelligence at all attached to it. So if they did have any type of processing power, then Riyadh would be finished, because they could hit Aramco, the facilities, and kind of shut down their whole entire operation.
Mm-hmm.
So if they had the technology to fire missiles precisely, they would hit Riyadh and Aramco.
Yeah, well, they probably would have taken the Air Force would probably try to have taken them out at the very beginning.
Okay.
The problem is they can't find them, right? So they have these missiles scattered all over the country on purpose, so that they could never find them. They're pretty much under bridges and buried in sand and things like that. And these are guys in sandals. Keep that in mind. These are guys in sandals out there fighting.
Mm-hmm. That's guerrilla. It's basically a guerrilla war that they're fighting.
And they took the Hodeidah port, or at least they made an attempt to, with the Emiratis. And from what I've heard on the ground is that they're taking a beating at that port. So
we're talking about the
Emiratis and the Saudis.
Yeah. They don't have enough. One, they're not experienced as far as the ground. As far as a ground war, one, and number two, they don't have the numbers. There's just not enough numbers. They don't, if they can't do it but from the air, then they don't have enough. How can I say, personnel actually for a land war?
Right, they're sending military contractors in out of Africa into there. So
okay. Any other points?
That's all I have.
All right, let's get to the next one here. This was kind of interesting. I read this one. To me, before I say it, to me, it sounds like the U.S. has a hand in this. All right, this is from RT.com from June 26. Australia buys 5 billion U.S. drones to spy over South China Sea. The Australian government is spending more than 5 billion on long-range surveillance drones to beef up its maritime security in the South China Sea, and it's costing Canberra more than double the original estimated price. The multi-billion-dollar military investment was announced on Tuesday, with the government vowing to buy 6 MQ-4C Triton remotely piloted aircraft from the U.S. Navy. The program will cost the Australians $5.1 billion or 6.9 Australian dollars, which includes the purchase of the drones and infrastructure investments. The,
aren't the MQs armed?
They can be armed. They're heavy
Yeah, that's what I thought. But go ahead, go ahead.
the Northrop Grumman MQ-4C Triton
Mm-hmm.
has a wingspan equivalent to that of a Boeing 737
Mm-hmm.
and can remain airborne for more than 30 hours at a time,
Mm-hmm.
surveying almost 3 million square miles of sea in in one flight. Australia's first Triton will take 5 years to come to service, while the full six aircraft strong fleet is to become operational in late 2025. The Tritons are to join the Australian Air Force's existing fleet of P-8A Poseidon aircraft and jointly undertake a range of intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance tasks, a government statement reads. The move is aimed at enhancing Australia's anti-submarine warfare and maritime strike capability, as well as border protection, and making the region more secure. The investment into the drones has sparked a debate at the Parliament, with members of the Liberal Party of Australia, Kevin Andrews, questioning whether it would enhance the capability of defending the country's national interest. Minister for Defence Industry Christopher Pyne stood by the investment, even as it is now costing the Australian taxpayer more than double the estimated 3 to 4 billion Australian dollars in 2016. One
Mm-hmm.
of the most important things we do as a nation as part of the Five Eyes is the reconnaissance and surveillance of the Indian Ocean, the Pacific, Southeast Asia, and of course to Antarctica. Pine told the MPs Australia's oper- Australia cooperates with four powers Canada, New Zealand, the UK, and the US in the Global Intelligence Alliance, known as the Five Eyes. Pine told Sky News that the operational area of the drones will cover the South China Sea. He added that Canberra insists on its rights for free movement in the region, the claim the claim Beijing has repeatedly rejected, as it considers the waters of the South China Sea its national territory. Australia is responsible for about 10% of the world's surface into the Indian Ocean, the Pacific down to Antarctica, up into the South China Sea, Pine said. China's claims over the region are challenged by several other regional players, including Vietnam, Brunei, Malaysia, and the Philippines. At the same time, the U.S., which Australia views as the most important defense ally, insists on freedom of navigation in the area and often sends its warships to sail through the disputed waters, drawing ire from Beijing. In addition to spying over the South China Sea, the drones will be used to monitor vessels in Australian waters, including other countries' naval vessels, and keep an eye out for people smugglers and illegal fishing activity. Now, as I read this,
Mm-hmm.
I thought I know we were talking about China trying to take over the South China Sea and building those man-made islands in the
Mm-hmm.
South China Sea and putting their military vessels around them to to protect them and prevent people from sailing through the South China Sea. And
Mm-hmm.
I read this and I think, okay, this is America's attempt to have another power that's close to that area to survey the South China Sea
Mm-hmm.
for them.
Yeah, and plus Australia has already been nervous about the rise of China because they're right next to them, and they are a white Western power, and they are nervous. So they didn't have to beg too hard.
Hmm. Anything,
right.
Mike?
So either you capitulate or you make some kind of preparation. I think they're making preparation. That's just my opinion. What do you think, Mike?
Well,
Tomorrow.
I just find it interesting.
Oh, go
I
ahead.
just find it interesting that China has largely kept Australia afloat financially
Mm-hmm.
the last 10 years or so with the mining contracts as well as some of these other technology contracts
Mm-hmm.
inside Australia.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it seems like the United States is using Australia as a fallback if South Korea falls in
Mhm.
terms of the deal with the North Koreans and having the U.S. troops and military hardware and infrastructure being removed out of South Korea by 2022 or something to that effect. I think that's the date that they have to leave.
Mhm.
So Australia is playing, is basically being a Jezebel in this instance, because without Chinese money, Australia falls into the wayside in terms of stability. And they're an island to themselves. They don't really have the sort of um, I guess the ability to bounce back from a recovery. If they fall, then they don't share borders with other countries, so they're kind of screwed.
They're between a rock and a hard place.
Now,
Exactly.
I saw a report that was saying rich Chinese were moving to Australia and buying up real estate in the
Mhm.
northern part of Australia.
Mhm.
hmm Yeah, there's a lot of rich Chinese kids that attending the universities there and beating the crap out of the white Australians there, in terms of GPA and as well as different STEM programs. So
They're sending their elite. You got to remember, uh, the elite Chinese, the top 10% of Chinese. That's 100 million people. So the thing is just sheer number. So they're sending their elite. So the top. You think about the top 1% would be what 10 million people. So you send out 10 million students. You talk about the top 1%. They're going to beat out 99% of anybody else. These aren't the China your average Joe Chinese coming from China. These are elite, so they will beat the snot out of the average Australians, all but the best.
So then you say, no, Australia doesn't have the capability to bounce back from a recession or a downturn, and they don't have any neighboring countries.
they don't
And
share
that
borders with other countries.
right, right. And the U.S. is using them as some like a proxy to spy over the South China Sea, and the article said that they're when they pay the money for these drones, they're going to end up paying double. So it seems to me that the U.S. is using them as a proxy to spy over this area and siphoning money from their economy.
Could be. Or it could be the all the money that Trump just gave them in the budget. They're just using it, and they're saying that the Australians are paying for it. They may not be.
Okay.
They just may not be. We don't know.
Well,
We'll find
the Americans already have two military bases inside Australia as it is.
out. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, there's already two in there. There's the
Yeah.
Air Force and the naval port.
Oh yeah, that's right. The Navy port's been there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
You
Okay.
you know about that, don't you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it shouldn't surprise you.
Then when you say I forgot about it. Okay. Any other points on poor Australia? We're gonna see how they.
Well, the thing is, they're between a rock and a hard place. So,
Mhm.
so the, so I'm not surprised that they're. It's not. It's not defensive. It's just reconnaissance, and
Yeah.
that's your first step. What I'm saying is, it's interesting that those particular drones can be armed. They're not just strictly surveillance.
Those are the biggest ones.
Yeah. So they could be. Whether they can carry what two. Was it two? Was I know they can carry sidewinders, but that was the other missile that they carry.
Well, they put Hellfire missiles on those.
Hellfires. Yeah, Hellfires. Yeah.
Yeah, they put Hellfire missiles on those. But the Chinese already have the ability to bring those down, because the Russians have brought down 16 of them just this year alone inside Syria, of those same drones. So and I think that was back in March.
Oh yeah, that's not an issue because what was the Stuxnet virus they implemented, and then the Russians and the Chinese reversed engineered and found out they could actually they infected all the whole drone fleet, and then back in 2000, shit, what was that? Trying to think when it was that. It was 2000, maybe 10 or somewhere around there, where they actually Might have been before that. I know it was under Obama where they had to ground the drone fleet for a minute because they had to be not re-engineered, but they had to have a software upgrade because they had been infected by the reverse engineered Stuxnet.
Stuxnet was for the nuclear facility, but
but they
it
was reverse engineered, and they found out that they had used a re-engineered version of Stuxnet that actually infected the drone fleet. I wish I could find that article.
I'm not familiar with that particular
Yeah.
malware, but the Iranians had brought down a very similar drone
Mhm.
over Iran a couple years ago, and reverse engineered it and gave it to China, and as well as gave it to I think Syria. They put it back together. It hit the ground and it kind of broke apart, but they put it back together 99%,
Mhm.
and basically copied all the data files and as well as the firmware, and just rebuilt it and used it for themselves. And they kind of transferred it to other neighboring states. I'm surprised that they would still use them because the Russians had brought down 16 of them over Syria I think just in 2018 alone. And I think the bombing attack that happened last week on Iraqi soldiers was used by that very drone.
Yeah, guess who made off with your files? Edward Snowden.
Well, they don't actually use software to bring these down. They actually just use radio frequencies just to disrupt it.
Mm-hmm.
There's an actual video that shows how the Russians bring it down, but it's an actual. It looks like a laser cannon, but it's just a it's just a radio frequency cannon that basically disrupts the drone itself.
It cuts them off from the control.
It gives them control. They take control of it.
They control of it because in fact they actually showed was the Iranians actually bringing them down. It was the Iranians. Somebody else actually might have been Pakistan, but actually the Iranians actually showing how they brought them down.
Mhm.
You know, it actually showed them how they took control of the drone and brought them down.
Okay.
That's all I have on now.
All right. Okay. This is the next one. This is from trtworld.com.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very interesting article 4 days ago. Moon Putin meet in Russia, hope to boost economic ties. Russian President Vladimir Putin and South Korean President Moon Jae-in
Mm-hmm.
agreed to take steps toward establishing complete denuclearization and to cooperate on future economic opportunities and infrastructure projects during Moon's visit to Russia. And before I get into this, it seems like these two words, these things are buzzwords: economic opportunities and infrastructure projects.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like when two leaders come together, they talk about that. It seems like those are buzzwords.
Those are Chinese buzzwords. That's called soft power.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Russian President Vladimir Putin, South Korean President Moon Jae-in agreed on Friday to support efforts to establish complete denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula following the U.S. North Korea summit last week. A joint statement signed by the two leaders during a state visit by Moon to Russia was released by South Korea's presidential Blue House. Moon said that cooperation with Russia was key to peace in the Korean Peninsula. Speaking to Parliament on Monday, Moon thanked Russia for its efforts in bringing about a regional peace settlement. Moon added that Pyongyang has taken real steps toward full denuclearization. President Vladimir Putin said Russia will continue to play its part in the search for a solution to the weapons standoff in the Korean Peninsula. Moon arrived in Russia on Thursday, the first official visit by a South Korean president since 1999. The Russian and South Korean leaders agreed that last week's historic summit in Singapore between U.S. President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong un will contribute to denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Putin and Moon agreed to continue joint efforts to establish complete denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula and secure permanent peace and stability on the peninsula and in Northeast Asia. Moon said historic changes are happening in the Korean Peninsula and steps are being taken towards denuclearization. Both Moscow and Seoul are hoping that reduced tensions with Pyongyang will open up opportunities for economic buzzwords again for economic and infrastructure projects that would directly link South Korea and Russia through North Korea. Those plans are currently blocked by international sanctions on North Korea, which international leaders have said will not be lifted until North Korea makes significant moves to give up its nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles. A number of countries, including South Korea and Russia, have nevertheless begun looking for ways to engage with North Korea economically should sanctions be lifted. Putin and Moon agreed to joint research in the field of electricity, gas, and railways in order to advance cooperative projects between North Korea, Russia, and South Korea. Their statement said large scale infrastructure projects will contribute to Northeast Asia's peace and prosperity. Railway projects were an area of common interest, the statement said, noting the development of a railway link between Russian eastern border town of Kazan, and the North Korean port of Rajin. Putin and Moon also agreed to cooperate on joint research to connect the Trans-Siberian Railway and the Trans-Korean Railway. In addition to security, Russia and South Korea talked about free trade agreements. Moon invited Putin to South Korea at a convenient time, which Putin accepted, the statement said. South Korean President Moon Jae-in visited Moscow Friday on a trip intended to boost bilateral economic ties. Following Moon's talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin at the Kremlin, officials from the two countries signed agreements on cooperation in various economic projects, energy, transportation, and innovative technologies. Putin emphasized that South Korea is one of Russia's top partners in the region and voiced hope that their two-way trade will expand. He held contacts between the two Koreas in the U.S. North Korean summit. We hope that it will help significantly reduce tensions around the Korean Peninsula and create conditions for forming a stable security for all countries in the region. He vowed that Moscow will also try to help settle problems concerning North Korea. Moon said Seoul was ready to promote a strategic partnership with Russia and paid homage to Russian culture, saying that he fell in love with Russia after reading Tolstoy and Dostoevsky. He noted that Moscow and Seoul share a desire to further expand their ties. The Kremlin has pushed for prospective trilateral economic projects involving Russia and both Koreas, including a railway and natural gas pipeline. Russian President Vladimir Putin on Friday invited his Seoul counterpart Moon Jae-in to an economic forum in Vladivostok in September, confirming his plans to host the leaders of both Koreas and Russia. We would be happy to see you as an honorary guest in Vladivostok Forum, which starts September 11th, Putin told Moon during a press conference after they held talks in Moscow. The Russian leader has also invited North Korea's Kim Jong un to the event, as well as the leaders of China and Japan. So far, only Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has confirmed his attendance. On Friday, Russian media reported that Kim has not yet responded to the Kremlin's invitation. There has been many answers. There has not been any answer yet. Putin aide Yuri Ushakov was quoted as saying by TASS news agency. During the press conference with Moon, Putin said he welcomed a recent historic summit between Kim and U.S. President Donald Trump in Singapore, where the two leaders signed a joint document calling for the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. We hope this will allow tensions to be significantly reduced in the Korean Peninsula and in the future create conditions for the formation of a sustainable security system in the region, he said. During his 3-day visit, Moon is also expected to watch South Korea's World Cup match against Mexico on Saturday in the city of Rostov on Don. All right. So,
Well,
mm,
I think I brought this up before, maybe a few weeks ago. It might have been when BGS was on the Hangout as well. Um, so I talked about Russia delivering natural gas to South Korea through North Korea, as well as other technological innovations, such as fiber optic pipeline, fiber optic lines from Russia into North Korea into the South, bringing both Koreas into the sphere of influence of the Russians, as well as
The
South
Chinese.
Korea potentially joining, the SCO at some point. So like this is where they're kind of hitting that the idea that South Korea is moving in that direction. Now the reason why Abe backed out and declined on going along with the rest of the heads of state was because Abe has a commitment to the U.S. and Abe is at odds with South Koreans and the North Koreans as well as the Chinese and the Filipinos
He's
as well, because they never apologized for what they did during World War II, which is all that the Chinese and the rest of the nation states are asking for is an apology, and the Japanese are basically saying no.
well. That's a good down payment, but that means capitulation. The Japanese are nervous. They're
Right,
scared.
they're shaking in their boots.
Just like the Europeans are shaking in their boots because the population of Africa is getting mighty large.
booyah.
In other words, sins of the father, right? Nations don't forget. They
Oh
don't
no no
forget.
no no no
They
no
don't
no
forget.
no no no
You know, they don't forget.
no. Even I know that.
Yeah, and sooner or later, karma's gonna have to catch up with you. And the thing is, you try to delay it as long as possible.
Right. This is all going to work out well for South Korea, North Korea, as well as Russia because of the infrastructure development that's going to go into it. They're going to put all the North Koreans to work because there's about 30,000 North Koreans working inside Russia as we speak right now, doing labor. If they decide to build that railway as well as the hydroelectric plant that the Russians are promising to the North Koreans to deliver energy from Russia into North Korea, this could be a big game changer for North Korea.
Yeah. Well, of course it is, and it's going to be a big changer, big game changer for all of Asia, really.
Yeah, and I'm in control of, but I saw a documentary about North Korea, and it's in a situation much like Cuba, where it's stuck in this. It's like it's stuck in the '60s. The
Yeah.
Time
infrastructure
warp.
is,
Yeah.
yes, a time warp. The buildings looks like '60s architecture. You see a lot of cars. It looks like it looks like cars from the '60s. So they're stuck in a time warp.
Yeah, they've been cut off. It's like they've been cut off from the rest of the world. So yeah, so they
So
basically they
So it
are.
seems like any infrastructure buildup is would be a large jump in the in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, keep in mind that they built the infrastructure to withstand another bombing onslaught that the United States had put on them before, right? So a lot of it is um, Soviet framework that would largely protect them from any heavy bombardment. So there's a lot of bunkers built under these buildings, to prevent them from actually being wiped off the face of the map. Because what happened before is that the United States practically wiped out 90% of the country's infrastructure. So they had to build it from the ground up, and they, I guess, vowed that this would never happen again, which is why they went with nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
And
what's interesting is that Dennis Rodman and a couple of the black entertainers have been going back and forth to North Korea the last decade or so. And I just find it interesting that they don't have any problem with black people, but they actually know who the real enemy is.
Why? I wonder why have they been going over there?
They're good brokers, good good I guess diplomatic missions for the United States. They don't put a white man into that country because most white men that go to that country end up getting locked up anyways.
So they sent a black man over there.
Right, and then you got Dennis Rodman puffing cigars with the Kim Jong Un's. I mean,
yeah. But Kim Jong Un was a fan of Dennis Rodman.
Okay.
So he requested him to come visit. Yeah.
Didn't Jay-Z or somebody go over there? Who was one over there?
There's a couple of other black entertainers that went over there. I forget their names right now, off the top of my head, but I just found that interesting as well.
Okay. Any other points on this one or on that one?
You can go on.
All right. Now I found this. It was saying, it's a YouTube video, was saying Iran may exit nuclear deal in the coming weeks. And in it, they were saying one, I think he's from the university, he was saying that well, first this guy, he was saying that the conference, he told the conference this day that JCPOA is in the intensive care unit because it has lost its balance as a result of the U.S. withdrawal from the deal, which we both talked about since the U.S. withdrew from the deal. The deal isn't as appetizing anymore. Now they're saying if this deal fall apart, it can actually lead to a war in that area. Um, the EU, not the EU, but the other countries that was part of this deal is still trying to keep it alive because they know if it falls apart, it can have repercussions to their economy. Well, I just found this interesting.
Yeah. So they being the EU have already started building infrastructure inside Iran, as well as already wrote deals on the books. So they don't want to pull out. Plus, Iran had already switched their ability to trade oil in U.S. dollars to euros. So that's why there's such an investment on the European side. So they have no interest in backing out of this deal. And if Trump wants to back out of it, then it only makes him look less trustworthy. Because if you back out of this, and you backed out of the Paris Climate Agreement, as well as these tariffs on China. First, you lifted the tariffs, and then you put the tariffs right back on behind their back after they've already signed an agreement not to do that. You just don't look very trustworthy, and you're kind of isolating yourself.
Okay. You got anything on the BGS? Oh.
I mean, it's basically, they need the oil. They're trying to bring the oil back online. They're trying to bring Iran because it is an oil producing state back into the fold, and because Europe needs energy, need all the energy they can get, and that's what basically that's what the whole deal was about. That's what the whole deal was about, and Trump decided he wanted to do something else. So he screws up the deal, and now everybody's got. He screws up the deal for nothing. That's how come they went and talked to him during the last World Economic Forum. They thought they had a deal, and he still went and did what he was going to do anyway. So, this go ahead.
No, I was going to say that I would be inclined to say that I think the Israelis are actually pushing him in that direction to actually tear up the deal. Tear up the agreement, because it's only the United States that seems to have a problem with this, when in fact it was Obama that actually signed off on it. So
okay.
If it was good enough for Obama, why wouldn't it be good enough for Trump?
Okay. Okay. This is actually, I wish I could find my notes, my old shows. the only thing they could actually do to Iran, period, they couldn't really bomb them because they're bringing the Russians and the Chinese. Can't really attack them. So the only thing you can do is sanction them. You keep them locked out of the SWIFT system and out of the banking system, so they can't trade. Make it difficult for them to trade, and that's fine. That's good as long as what? There's no parallel system. What happens when the Chinese start building a parallel system? How long are your sanctions actually going to work?
When you say a parallel system, you're talking about
the Asian International Bank. I think I forget what the other SWIFT system, the other parallel banking system.
The Russians call it the SPF.
The SPF. What I'm saying, the Chinese called it something else. Gold and a few other cryptos, a whole bunch of other things. In other words, the only thing that you have to actually control them is what? Financial. You can't do anything else to them. And if you don't get them to have an agreement, every year that you wait and don't sign an agreement or try to get them in an agreement, you lose power, you lose leverage in that deal, because after I said it back then, after 5 years, 5 or 6 years, the sanctions won't be worth squat. And basically now the sanctions they're trying to put back on Iran, what are they worth now? The Iran's going to sell their oil anyway. They won't. The only thing they won't do is sell it to the Europeans. They're going to sell it to everybody else. Because the biggest users of oil are in Asia now, rather than the Europeans. So so they don't need euros or European money anymore, at least not to survive. So they can basically give the Europeans and the Americans the big middle finger. They don't care. So that's like Obama wisely, because that's what I would have done. Sit down and talk. So what good in 5 years? What good are the sanctions going to be? Less and less and less, or little to none. So what do? While you have leverage, what do? What would you do? You cut a deal, because you get the maximum amount of leverage in that deal, because 3 years, 4 years down the line, you won't be able to cut that deal. Now they don't. Obviously, Iranians don't really care anymore. Basically, you can go out and kick rocks with your sanctions.
Well, I think their response was pretty simple: is that you can have the sanctions, or you can have the deal, but you can't have sanctions in the deal, which is kind of what they were saying last week. So if we're gonna tear up the agreement, then we'll just go back to doing what we were doing before, and you backing out of the deal, being the United States, is not going to stop us from doing what we need to do, because our oil is not traded in U.S. dollars anymore. It's now traded in euros, as well as
or whatever other currency it is. In other words, the United States sanctions are worth what now?
Oh, nothing. But I guess their threat is that they're going to go in there and bomb them, but which is going to be a massacre for the United States, because they'll lose going in, especially from a ground war. They'll never win that.
They're not okay. That's okay. Okay, now strategically, if the United States is especially with the help of the Russians and the Chinese, and in fact, I actually played the asymmetric warfare scenario done back in 2005 by a Filipino general. He described it. What's the first thing the Iranians are going to cut off?
The Persian Gulf.
The Strait of Hormuz is gone.
Yeah.
Okay. And guess what's going to happen to your oil prices in the United States?
They're going to spike.
It's going to spike, and basically at 100, and what did they say? When did they say basically your economy starts to shut down at $110 a barrel?
Dollar Will has a chart up. I think he said that he speculated something like a $240 a barrel. It will go up.
No. If in fact, who said it was?
I trust the charts.
Okay, you trust, okay. The trust never got to $240 a barrel. In fact, it was an economist. What was his name? What's his name? I'll find it and I'll actually play it. He says $125, $130 a barrel, the economy starts to shut down. And in fact, the peak oil price ever recorded and it was just a peak for one day. I think it was $151. Boom, that was the top, and it spiked and it started to decline right from there. At $240, you won't have an economy. Anything over 150. Now that the economy is so weak right now, it can't stand what it stood back in 2007. Can't even stand it because this is that spike was actually before the 2008 crash. The spike was before the 2008 crash. So if it happens now, in a weak economy, weak global economy now, it's going to shut down. It's going to crack. They can't afford that. The United States can't afford that. Hell, look at the
Dollar Will's in the chat. He says the 147 was the last high. The next high should be 238.
Yeah, once the 147 was the last high. When was the last time? And that was 2007, was it not? Where you guys see in the chat? Because I can't see the chat.
I got another window open.
Oh, okay.
Your Dollar Will's in the chat. He says that 147 was the last high. And next high should be 238. That could be this year. That could be this year.
That's not going to happen. 238 is not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
That's what he showed on the charts.
Yeah, physically it cannot happen. Can't happen. That was a spike. And there was a couple of economists that said anything over that the economy was shut down. Well, the global economy was shut down.
Well, the U.S. Fifth Fleet is sitting inside Qatar right now. I mean, that's only a few minutes away from Iran. If push comes to shove, they'll battle it out in the Persian Gulf.
Okay, what oil tanker is going to come through a freaking war zone? You let me. If you can tell me that, man, you can go be. We'll actually send you to Saudi Arabia to be a security analyst. If you can figure out how you can get a freaking oil tanker, slow ass oil tanker through a war zone. Now your brother, what I'm saying, we got a Navy vet on the here on the line. Linnell, what's the odds of a slow ass tanker coming through a war zone?
Well, you got not only the Navy. Oh, that's not good. I'll just say that it's not good because you got the planes, you got the jets, the surface ship, and the submarine force.
Submarines, landmines, jets, fast boats, supersonic underwater missiles, you name it. And basically, you know how slow a fucking oil tanker is. It's a sitting duck. Hell, an aircraft carrier moves faster than an oil tanker.
Now, you saying if a war were to break out in the Persian Gulf,
in the Strait of Hormuz,
you've been to the Persian Gulf.
You've been through the Strait of Hormuz, right?
I've been to Bahrain, so that's in there.
So in other words, look at the map of the Strait of Hormuz and see how narrow that is.
Yeah. It can get tricky because of that. It can get tricky,
and you don't have to be in the water to hit a tanker.
Well, no, you don't. No.
So in other words, it's not just the Navy that has to get involved. They have to. Everything along the Iranian coast has to be wiped out because you will not get that tanker through.
From Iran all the way out into the Indian Ocean. Okay.
Mm-hmm. What are they? If say we hired you, Linnell, to actually say as a oil concern, can you guarantee that we're gonna get this big ass tanker that costs billions of dollars through this zone without getting hit by the Iranians? What would you tell them?
No, you're gonna need a hell of backup because, like you said, it's slow. And maritime Navy fleet, they're not gonna hit you straight from the water. They're gonna try to hit you from land first because to deploy all that's gonna cost money. They're gonna try to hit you from land first. If they can't do that, then they're gonna scramble air. If they can't do that, then here comes the actual Navy fleet. But the Navy got more planes than the Air Force, so they already got the planes on the aircraft carrier. So it's going against a slow ship like that it wouldn't be hard. The backlash from it would be worse than shooting it. Destroying it.
Ships in the Strait of Hormuz are usually escorted.
What I'm saying is, okay, Mike, And now you're good at math. Would you send a slow ass oil tanker that's worth billions of dollars through the Strait of Hormuz, knowing that there's a conflict?
No. All that maritime traffic would be halted before it even, before any deployments would take place. Well, what I'm saying is that if push comes to shove, that the U.S. decides that they want to go into Iran, they would actually lose going in. And Iran's pretty dug in pretty deep inside the mountains. So they've tried this before. I think about maybe 9 months or so ago, that they tried to send in a what do you call it, the Kurds. They tried to use the Kurds to get into the bottom of Iran. And that didn't work out too well. The Iranians caught him in the mountains and basically shut all that stuff down. There's actually a documentary about it on YouTube. And essentially, Israel wants U.S. and Saudi Arabia to go fight the war for them. I don't think that's going to work out too well for Saudi Arabia, nor is it going to work out too well for the U.S. Saudi Arabia can barely handle guys with sandals on the ground.
Israel does not want to fight Iran, or that's just rhetoric. In fact, they had threatened to back in 2010. If I could actually find the goddamn article, basically Netanyahu and a few others were actually planning a bombing raid on Iran. Guess who shut it down? Guess who shut that down?
U.S.
No, IDF. They found out about it. They went up there and said, nope, break it up. Don't even try. Don't even think about it.
You mean Mossad?
No, Israeli Defense Force came in and shut the meeting down. Period. It's not gonna happen.
Yeah, because they can't handle the backlash. They wouldn't be able to handle the backlash.
The IDF shut it down, and Iran is not gonna get bombed or attacked. I don't care who it is. It's not gonna happen.
Now, Dollar Will said the symbol USO peaked July 2018. They shut down the malls back then because the transportation costs were too high to pass to shoppers.
Well, Dollar Will can always get on the Hangout as well. He doesn't have to type in chat.
Yeah. What I'm saying, if he's adjusting for peak oil as far as inflation, Jeremy Rifkin, in fact, that's who said it, because he was actually talking about it in an interview. We talked about the fourth industrial revolution. He says at peak, at a certain, the economists knew there was a certain price. I think he said anything over $125, basically the global economy starts to shut down. At 150, it's pretty much dead. 240, you'll never see 240. It's not gonna happen.
Well, if Dollar Will gets on, before he gets on, let me read this article that has something to do with the oil. This is from CNBC.com. June 26. U.S. crude surges 3.6%, selling at $70.53. After the State Department says oil buyers must cut Iranian imports to zero. Crude prices surged by more than 3% on Tuesday after the U.S. State Department said it will require companies to cut all oil imports from Iran to zero by November. The announcement exacerbates concerns about a shortage of oil at a time when Venezuela's production is in terminal decline and the market is grappling with short-term supply disruptions from Canada and Libya. Last week, OPEC and other producers, including Russia, agreed to raise output to prevent price spikes. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures ended Tuesday's session up $2.45 a barrel, or 3.6%, to $70.53, erasing earlier losses and breaking above $70 for the first time since May 25th. International benchmark Brent crude was up $1.60, or 2.1%, at $76.33 per barrel by 2:29 p.m. Eastern Time. Oil prices rose further in late electronic trading after API data showed a large decline in oil investors of 9.2 million barrels in the latest week. Government supply data is expected Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. The U.S. is continuing its decline to completely isolate Iran, said Gene McGillen, Vice President of Market Research at Tradition Energy. They're ringing the bell even louder. President Donald Trump withdrew the U.S. from the Iran nuclear deal and restored wide ranging sanctions against the Middle Eastern country in May, but the administration did not set a timeline for completing cutting Iran crude imports. Market watchers questioned whether Trump would follow former President Barack Obama's model, which called on foreign companies to reduce their purchases by 20% every 180 days. But the State Department clarified on Tuesday that Trump expects buyers to entirely wind down those purchases by November 4th. This isn't unexpected. These people seem strident in what they want to do, said McGillen. Which what the effect is going to be the difficult thing to measure. It could point to more demand for U.S. oil. Iran, OPEC's third largest, biggest producer, exports more than 2 million barrels per day. John Kilduff, founding partner at energy hedge fund Again Capital, said Trump's decision appears collaborated to crush the Iranian regime, which has endured despite nearly 40 years of U.S. pressure. I'm seeing the companies left, right, and center drop out from buying Iranian oil, Kilduff said. Total and Shell have announced they're not buying it anymore starting now. Total CEO Patrick Pouyanné told CNBC that last week that no major multinational oil and gas company can take the risk of running afoul of U.S. sanctions by doing business with Iran. Earlier in the day, oil prices pulled back sharply following a report that Saudi Arabia aims to increase its output to record levels next month, following an agreement among oil producers to ease output caps that have been in place for 18 months. The Saudis intend to hike production from about 10 million barrels per day to 10.8 million barrels per day in July, Bloomberg News reported. OPEC has faced pressure from big oil consumers such as India and China to tamp down oil prices after they recently rose to new 3.5 year highs. Trump also called on OPEC to add more supply as he faces the prospect of Americans holding him accountable for gasoline prices
Mm.
hovering near $3 a gallon.
Right before an election, too.
Oil prices also got support on Tuesday from an outage at Canada's largest oil sands facility and concerns about Libya's crude exports due to developments in that country's ongoing conflict. The commander of Libya's eastern political faction has transferred control of oil ports to a national company aligned with his faction, cutting off access to the supplies for the official oil authority in Tripoli, Reuters reported. All right, y'all go ahead.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see who goes with them. I know they issued an order. Who see who goes with them?
Yeah, no.
Europeans ain't feeling them right now.
Europeans ain't feeling who.
Trump. Remember
Right,
the G7,
right.
the G7 where basically Trump pissed them all off. Europeans ain't feeling him right now.
You guys hear me?
We got you,
Yes.
Yeah, this I recall what they were saying, BGS. I think they said around $80 it starts to, be a little painful, but when it gets in that 100 to 110 area, it's like crisis.
You know what the whole what that peak was for oil back in 2008. You know what that was about, right?
No.
Chinese Olympics. In fact, I called it because I remember we were actually talking about on our we were actually talking about it on our think tank back in 2007, 2008, and the odd thing is that remember at the time, I know you're a trader. Remember at the time where diesel was higher than everything else,
right? Yeah,
and I couldn't figure out why. So I said, so the thing is that I said, damn, I said, who the fuck would use all this goddamn diesel? and then I saw a picture of the buildings they're actually using in the building boom in China. I saw all the cranes and all the trucks and stuff like that. I said, "Oh shit, they're preparing for the Olympics," and that's how come you had that peak at 140. The Olympics go off. I think the Olympics were in, if I'm not mistaken. And right. It is the Olympics go off. Basically, that price dropped like a stone, and it sure did right after because they finished building. And after they finished building, they stopped using it. Basically, the price of oil just plummeted.
Are you guys able to see this chart?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what we talked with BGS is talking about. Hit that 147, and this was like in July. By December, it was down to $32. So it dropped pretty fast.
Yeah, because the Chinese stopped buying. Yeah.
Right. And for me right now, again, I'm just a technical trader, so I don't have a dog in the fight in the fundamental argument. So that 238 is the next theoretical high.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we didn't even last long at 147. So, it's crisis mode. I was glued to the TV every day at that time, because I remember the stories when they were closing shopping malls around the country because the amount of money the stores were paying to truck the stuff in, they couldn't pass that markup on to the customer. So they decided,
and grocery stores too, same thing.
So they determined that it was cheaper to just close the mall.
Yeah.
Oh, and they actually closed malls.
Actually, I want to show you something really interesting.
Okay, I'm gonna let this release this.
Let me share this real quick.
How do I cut this off the screen share?
Stop share. It should say stop.
There you go.
Before, but there was a peak oil this, you can see this is actually World War II, where the oil peaked then. This is what? This is Japan in the 80s. This is China in the 2000s. Okay. In other words, what group of countries is actually going to be enough to actually go beyond this peak? Right here.
Right.
So in other words, this is 80, this is 2000. So if there's another peak, it's going to be a good another 20 years off at the very minimum, and there's got to have to be some other kind of like superpower or something like that, economic power actually rise up and actually force these prices higher.
Yeah, well, honestly, I'm in a state of confusion about what this chart is doing, what oil is doing. I mean, with the dollar has a lot more to go. So I'm not messing with oil. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not ruling out a retest of that low of $25.
Yeah,
I think we go lower on oil at some point before we get into that crisis mode where oil goes to the moon.
No, I don't think oil is going to go to the moon. I think it's there's no, underlying technicals is always fundamentals. There's nothing there that actually shows that oil is going to actually go that high. No.
So you're saying there's no fundamental to support it?
Unless you get a war. I mean, a big one. If you get a war and a big one, oil will actually shoot past that 142 mark. But you're gonna need a big one, and God help the economy if we get into one at this particular point, because the world can't afford a war right now.
Okay, let's see. We just looking at another way again. I'm just technical guy. Let's say not when, not if, but when, when the Dow and S&P bottoms, which is going to be a long way from these price levels. The economy has this reversion to the means, and we go back into growth phase again. The growth phase with, you got Africa and other countries growing, India. We got new growth centers. Could that be enough to increase the demand for oil.
It could be, but the thing is, will that be actually parlayed also, maybe actually subverted by the new energy technologies coming online?
And I'm gonna speak to that, but one other speculation, and it's speculators. The dollar, whenever the dollar finishes this climb, and the dollar is going to go on a death spiral now. In that scenario, gold and oil should rise to irrational levels, just on the strength of the dollar being a place everybody's trying to run away from. So it what's that irrational exuberance? I think that the weakness in the dollar is going to cause gold and oil to rise to irrational levels beyond what fundamental theory suggests.
Maybe, but oil, I don't think so, because if it rises to irrational levels, who's going to buy it?
Well, it'll rise until nobody buys it. It'll find whatever that point is. We found it before at 147.
It won't. It rose up because the Chinese were buying it, and right after they stopped buying it, it crashed. Chinese were buying it for a reason, for a short-term reason, which is actually the build-out for the Olympics, because they were actually going to host a coming out party. You know, just like a woman, she'll spend all she can for their coming out party. Once it's done, she's broke. It's gonna crash again.
So you don't buy the argument that materials and energy is that money rotates there for no other, even if the only reason is dollar weakness.
Dollar weakness means it's going to be some sort of global, general global recession, because the biggest buyers on the planet are who?
China and India.
No, the biggest consumers on the planet are the United States.
Right.
And basically, you have to have the biggest, the fundamental, when it's in supply and demand, what is the biggest factor? It's not supply, it's demand. What happens when demand drops?
Supply drops too.
So, well, the thing is,
if demand
drops, prices has to drop.
Right.
So the United States goes into a depression, because of dollar weakness. Then, there's only so much you can demand for oil, or any oil.
Right. Yeah. Right. Of course, there's a limit, but we don't know where that limit is.
Contraire, I think 150 is the limit. I do believe 150 is the limit.
Let's see, if we go back before, I think, what was the high? The high before the 147 was around 110 or something like that. I don't think anybody thought then we would ever see 147.
Well, 125.
It was 125. Yeah, it was, in fact,
125. Okay.
125, 131 was actually the highest before that 147. That 147 was a one-day spike, because I remember it. I looked at the chart. It was a one-day spike. I don't even know who settled that last contract either. I feel for him if he did. Whoever settled that last contract had to take that last that high contract. He feels like a sucker, I'm sure.
Yeah,
the chart settle that motherfucker, man, took some kind of pain. It was a one-day spike.
Well, whoever sold it to him feeling good.
Well, he bought it. Yeah, whoever sold it to him does feel good.
That's the greater fool theory.
It's the great. There was one last one on the boat. Okay, because I remember that distinctly. Actually following the chart. In fact, I knew in July it would drop. I just wondered which day. And basically, in fact, I do believe that was the last day of the contract. I do believe that was the last day of the July contract. Had to settle. If I'm not mistaken, I'd have to go back in my notes, but I do believe that was the last day of the contract, and that was the high.
I'm actually looking now to see. I have a daily. That chart I put up was a monthly. Now I'm looking at a daily.
I do believe that was the last day of the contract. It was a spike, if I'm not mistaken.
Close enough. I mean, it did kind of run up on. Let me see if I can put it up so we can kind of see it. Let's see. Okay. We are, it was booking now, so I'm like, so it's what my eyes are going bad here. So we're at like 121 here, and what is this? June. So yeah, like in June. So yeah, it didn't take long. I mean, it wasn't a day, but still, to go from 125 to 147 in like a month, that's still pretty fast.
Mm-hmm.
That's still that's booking.
Yeah.
So you're saying the previous high was like around 125, but still to go.
It was 131. I think the previous high was like 131 or something like that.
Yeah, still to go from that blow off to get here, even inside of a month, that's still pretty fast.
Yeah. The Chinese Olympics 2008 was in August. The opening ceremonies was August 8th.
Yeah, but like I said, I'm a technical trader. I just do I've watched the volumes, use my oscillators, and I go where the money goes.
Mm-hmm. What I'm saying is, the charts will tell you this chart. If everything is copacetic, the charts will tell you a lot, but it also tell you when something's not right. And at the time, if you actually look up diesel, the price of diesel was selling like maybe $1 over everything else, which diesel normally is like 10 or 20% under, say, like refined stuff. And that absolutely did not make any sense, because I think the peak, I think diesel peaked out like $5.20, which was extraordinarily high for diesel. And I think the unleaded price was like in the fours, something like that, which is just a complete anomaly. And that there's something wrong when that happens.
Yeah, there's another factor we have to not disregard, and that is back in when we're talking about 2008 and that time, in that era, people don't even say it now, but there was this other ruler on the block, and it went by the name of King Coal. You haven't even heard anybody say that, but prior to 2008, coal was king. And so oil, even with coal being king, and coal was very expensive too at that time period, and oil still went to 147. So
yeah, because
I would not be surprised.
No. The thing is, when I investigated it at the time, that was the only thing that made sense. And the reason it made sense, the reason that I know what I'm talking about, is because diesel was $1 more than everything else, and diesel does not trade. Because I traded oil for years. Diesel has never flipped above the refined stuff. Never.
Yeah, I'm not arguing against any of that. I'm just painting a bigger picture for people watching that, we don't talk about coal right now. So people, I'm just letting people know that wasn't even thinking about any of this 10 years ago, that there was another big bully on the block, and it was coal. A lot of our utility companies were burning coal, and so even with coal, oil, still spiked.
because China
and so did was it First Solar, those solar companies, anything, natural gas, plastics, all of it went up.
Plastics, all that stuff. But the thing is that China actually, because the United States used to dictate what the price of oil was because it was the biggest buyer, and then I think it was 2007, 2008 actually crossed over where China became the biggest purchaser of oil, and they've never looked back.
And I'll tell you something else, just because, past is prologue. If we have a energy crisis in the sense of demand is outpacing supply, we will burn coal again. People don't believe the hype that we care that much about the environment. They will burn coal again.
Yeah, well, yeah. They. In fact, India still burns a majority of its energy comes from coal.
Now I got a question.
Mhm.
Is oil the canary in the gold mine in terms of knowing if the economy is going to falter?
Mm. It's
It's
one
a
fact.
good indicator.
It's one factor. It's one factor. It's just one
Okay.
factor because um
Got
uh
to run them factories.
yeah. Well, it has to run the factories, but the thing is that um I would say, damn, you look at oil, you look at gold, and then like I say, you look at the dollar. You look at those three, and that gives you those three give you a good indicator. One doesn't stand by itself because you can have low oil and still be in a recession.
Okay, now I'm
That's
learning.
why
Okay.
I live
And
there.
you can have high oil and still be in a recession. So the thing is, you need all three.
That's why I live right there in that complex.
Yeah.
Okay. I know gold is the opposite of the dollar. If the dollar is up, gold is down, and when gold is up,
Supposed to be. Yeah.
supposed to
Supposed to
be.
be. Yeah.
Okay,
I
now.
lost money by
And oil too, supposed to.
yeah. I lost money betting on that.
But it's
Uh,
not exact. It's not
It's not
exact to the
exact.
day.
yeah, because a lot of your gold now is paper traded, so it's not pure. It's not the pure metal anymore.
Okay,
Right.
so where does oil stand in that equation? I know it's not exact, but
Because you need oil to run your economies. You can't run your economy without oil. All your urban centers are dead without oil.
so
Okay, think of it this way: oil, gold, and the euro move together generally.
Mm-hmm.
Think of it
gold,
that way.
oil,
And the
And the
euro.
and the
Yeah.
euro,
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And the dollar is opposite all the three.
and the dollar is opposite: gold, oil, and the euro.
Yes.
So if those are up, the dollar's down.
Generally speaking.
Generally speaking, and if the dollar is up, those are down.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Or I look at it this way: if there's trouble in one of those three areas, people gonna hide out in the dollar.
Yeah, because the dollar is still the reserve currency.
Okay, now let me throw this curveball at you all.
Well, dollar's on the other side of gold because it's a
Now,
reserve currency. Go ahead.
let me throw this curveball at you all. The dollar isn't a reserve country. The dollar is in the future. Dollar is not the reserve currency.
Ooh, yeah,
It's something.
yeah.
Um,
It loses its seniorage. Huh?
right. That I understand. That I have learned to understand. But
And when we get to that point, I'll just look at the charts and see what it is. Our first thing I'll do is get out of it. I'm not gonna trade it at all. I'm gonna watch for a minute and see what it is, see what the deal is.
You're gonna get some pain. You're gonna get some pain because at that day, sooner or later, those dollars will come back home.
Right.
okay, now what will replace the dollar as a reserve currency?
We don't know.
So
Right.
is
It's
whatever.
actually the yuan.
It could be well. The Chinese don't want the renminbi or the yuan to actually become a reserve currency because of all the probably like Linnell knows being a reserve currency or seniorage is not always
Cakes and pies.
it's not cakes and pies. Basically, there's an upside and downside because you have to run it's an automatic deficit when you actually start running seniorage. There's advantages, and the Chinese have resisted having the yuan or the renminbi as a reserve currency because the downside to it. They don't want to get tied to it.
Go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just gonna say that China actually applied to have the yuan as a reserve global currency.
Really? What was
When did
that?
they do that?
Let me see if I can find the article. It was
Yeah,
from this year.
boy, I ain't heard that one because the Africans were just asking them to actually settle their debts in yuan. So what doesn't make that sounds like it's
Okay,
counterintuitive.
the yuan is the global name, but the local name is the renminbi.
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 I think that's how they pronounce it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think there's a dual currency that they have in place
Yeah.
because Most, I think not most countries, but I know most communist countries had dual converted currencies.
The internal local currency
Yeah.
and a global.
Yeah.
Mm.
One for trade and exports, and one for the local microeconomy.
Yeah, because they loan them because the Africans were upset because they get loans in yuan or in yuan, and they have to pay back their debts in dollars. So they have to go trade for dollars to pay back their debts, which they're upset about because the dollar comes with a cost.
Price.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with a price. So it costs them more to pay back their debts in dollars, and they were upset about it. So it'd be news to me if they actually applied. Really, you don't really apply for it. You just
Okay. I got it.
pretty much
I just dropped a link in the chat.
I got it.
At least
Yeah.
one of the links I had read before.
Let me get to this.
It must have been really recent because I ain't heard that one.
This article is from 2015, but there was another article I read, I think from 2017, that was talking about things like late 2017.
This is from the BRICS Post. China IMF talks underway to endorse yuan as global reserve currency. Let's see here. China is pushing for the International Monetary Fund to endorse the Chinese yuan as a global reserve currency alongside the dollar and the euro.
In other words, they want to be part of the basket of currencies.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not trying to be they're not trying to replace the dollar. Which is something that what is it? Who said that? Was it Johnson? It might have been Johnson. That actually said they being the sole reserve currency is a headache.
Right.
And the United States and Nixon and Volcker found a way to pull it off and make it work for them, but it requires a lot of force and a lot of cajoling. And once they got that, if you can actually run deficits in perpetuity and keep your seigniorage, that's the best of both worlds. And they figured out a way to do it. And they've been running deficits in perpetuity since 1971. And they figured out a way to actually basically game the system. And then people had to accept it until 2008 when they gamed it a little bit too much.
Now we got one more article to get to. It's a little
right.
lengthy and it's a little lengthy and it's a little poetic at the same time.
You can read half of it if you want.
Okay, go ahead. Okay. This is from atimes.com.
Mhm.
Turkey's European dream may be over. Is the Sultan ready for Eurasia? Erdogan has lost his parliamentary majority and must now establish a coalition with the far-right National Action Party, given the latter is anti-Western.
I remember that article, Mike.
The road ahead points in only one direction:
Mhm.
Eurasian integration. Now I read half, but it's a point. It's a paragraph at the end that I felt was very good. To the utter despair of stoic defenders of Western values, Europe is now condemned to suffer two populist autocracies on its eastern borders:
Mhm.
Putin's Russia and Erdogan's Turkey.
Yep.
For the EU's political leaders, the only accepted narrative is blanket hysterical condemnation of illiberal democracies,
Mhm.
distorted by personal rule,
Mhm.
xenophobia, and suppression of free speech.
Mhm.
And that also applies to the strong men in
Mhm.
Hungary, Austria, Serbia, Slovakia, and Czech Republic.
Mhm.
These EU leaders and the institutions that support them, political parties, academia, mainstream media, simply can't understand how and why their bubble does not reflect what voters really think and feel.
Mhm.
Instead, we have irrelevant intellectuals mourning the erosion of the lofty Western civilizing mission, investing in the philosophical maelstrom of historical and even biblical references to their catalog of angst.
Liberalism is a very new idea.
Oh, okay, in that area of the world.
the world period. Liberalism
Okay.
is a very new idea. In fact, the liberalism didn't come about until until the 18th century.
Okay.
A very new idea, and the vast majority of the world is well, for the vast majority of the human beings' time, is authoritarianism.
Okay. The, they are terrified by so many Darth Vaders,
Mm-hmm.
from Putin to Erdogan to Xi to Kamen, Khamenei,
Yeah,
Khamenei.
Khomeini.
Instead of understanding the new remix to Arnold Toynbee's original institution, history is again on the move. They wallow in their mire of the West against the rest. They cannot possibly understand the mighty process of Eurasia
Mm-hmm.
reconfiguration, and that includes not being able to understand why Recep Tayyip Erdogan is so popular in Turkey. Now, that is another. It's a part where
Mm-mm. Yeah,
here,
basically, for the last couple of years, the what is it? The foreign affairs have been talking about printing articles calling the end of the liberal order, of the Western liberal order,
uh,
and and the rise of authoritarianism, like we're seeing right here. So they've been talking about this for the past 2 or 3 years, and believe it or not, they're even talking about it here, that Trump might signal authoritarianism here in the United States.
in this one paragraph, I felt summed up to
Mm-hmm.
me the entire article. It says relations with Iran are stable. Energy and military relations with Russia are paramount. Turkey can invest in economic projection across Central Asia. Russia and China are luring it into joining the Shanghai Cooperation Organization.
Mm-hmm.
Erdogan may finally be able to position Turkey as the essential bridge between the new Silk Roads or Belt and Road Initiative and the West. Now, I read the article earlier and I read that part, and
Mm-hmm.
I understand on past hangouts, even though earlier in this hangout, you all were saying that both you, BGS and Mike, were all saying how the EU
Mm-hmm.
is weakening and how Turkey did want to become part of the EU
Mm-hmm.
in the past,
Mm-hmm.
but now that the EU is sinking,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't seem that you will want to join a sinking ship. But with this new block coming up, the Shanghai Cooperation,
Mm-hmm.
then Turkey's geopolitical position is still prime because it links both the East and the West.
Mm-hmm.
So if they were to get invited to the Shanghai Cooperation,
Mm-hmm.
then it will still benefit them because all of that energy and resources and trade can go through Turkey
Mm-hmm.
into Europe. That's how I'm looking at that article.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, that's part of the land bridge. In fact, the major part of the land bridge, because Turkey touches about what 3 or 4 countries in what we call the Middle East.
Mm.
So it's a major land bridge. I mean, it's a major coup. That's how come I couldn't understand how the United States actually screwed this up. I'm still shaking my head. I said, at war with Syria, and you need Turkey. You need them to help you control that area, and you do a boneheaded move by trying to have a coup against Erdogan, who's your ally. He might be hard to get along with, but he's still your ally. So you try to have him whacked in a sense.
Yeah, miscalculation in the political status of Turkey at the time, because they were involved in the Ukrainian coup, and that was successful for them
Mm-hmm.
in the way that they destabilized Ukraine and lit a fire on Russia's doorstep and had the Russians, basically at the doorstep stomping out a fire. Um, and I guess they were hoping that the same thing would happen in Turkey, where the people would be just so dissatisfied that they would just go with the coup and overthrow Erdogan. Because if you look at some of the video
Mm-hmm.
um, of the coup, it was pretty graphic.
Mm-hmm.
The helicopter gunships were basically firing at the police officers on the ground, and the police officers are firing back pistols at the gunship, not realizing that you're not going to penetrate the armor that's on that gunship. But
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, see the people in the street to open up a tank hatch and basically put a bullet inside the tank driver's head.
Okay.
That's So I think the United States had the anticipation that these guys would actually be successful in that destabilization. You know, that Turkey would be just like Ukraine, would just be on fire and just.
Yeah, but the thing is, you destabilize Turkey. It just, what you want is a smooth transition of power. If you in Turkey, you know, if you get a failed state in Turkey, man, that is. In other words, if it's not done right, you're actually gonna screw everything up. You're gonna really screw the fruits. There's only only three things could have happened, and two of them are bad.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, can you imagine a failed state like Turkey right on the border of the entrance into Europe?
It wouldn't necessarily be failed if they get the Kurds into power like they want them to.
If the Kurds come into power, what do you think is going to happen? It's going to be a civil war. It's going to be a failed state. That's going to be a failed state. What do you think they're going? The Turks are just going to let the Kurds roll in and take over?
Well, with the United States backing them, I don't see
why
it wouldn't be a wild card for them.
In other words, okay, if basically Turkey, which is a very old state, and the Kurds are an ancient enemy, if the Kurds roll in and try to take over, how long do you think that the Turks are just gonna because the Americans are there, just throw up their hands and not fight back?
Oh, obviously not. But I'm saying the outcome was what they were predicting, was that they would actually have some form of political power within the state itself, considering that they had Israel backing them the whole entire time.
Yeah, but the thing is, it wasn't going to be Kurds. It's going to be other. It's going to be other Turks. The Turks that were actually on their side. It was going to be Turks. It wasn't going to be Kurds. That's a recipe for disaster, man. You will have the whole region will blow up. You think what you did with Syria is bad? You know, you go after Turkey and get involved with the Kurds, and then you're gonna have the Iraqis, the Kurds, the Iranians, and everybody else right around in that region, man, all up in a tizzy. It's gonna be talk about a shit show. You have if you're gonna do that, it has to be done right, and it has to be done relatively bloodlessly. And the first thing you have to do is get what they really needed was Erdogan dead, which is what they were trying to more almost like they did in but that wasn't Argentina. Trying to remember what was it?
Venezuela when they took Chavez.
Oh well, yeah, you want something like that, more like that. It's where it's relatively bloodless, and they didn't get him. And once they didn't get him, basically it was pretty much over. And they probably would have got him if the Russians hadn't warned him, because it was a total shot.
Well, he wasn't in the country either, right?
Because the Russians told him it was coming.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand that. But what I'm saying is, he's not. If he's not available, he's just not available. I think they kind of had an idea that something was going to go down, but what was going to go down was really the question, I guess, for them. And Russian intelligence giving them that information was, the solidifying position for them. They
didn't have enough people, because it was basically an inside coup. They didn't have enough people behind them, and it didn't work. So and basically that coup petered out really, really fast. So they didn't have a lot of people behind them, because their whole thing was to get Erdogan, and they didn't get him. Had they got him, you have a shot. They don't get him, they had no shot. And once that thing failed, it basically the whole thing just kind of blew up, and it's just getting worse. That's when I knew that basically them prosecuting Syrian war is just a waste of money now, for the most part. Everything's wasting money, because the biggest factor that was actually helping you prosecute the Syrian war is gone. That piece is flipped. In fact, the bigger piece in Syria just flipped. It's like you tried a bold move. You just basically gave him in a chess move. Gave him a knight. Just gave him a knight. He left them exposed and gave them a knight. Now they're a knight up on you. Now you got to worry. Right now, eventually, the United States is going to have to worry about its backyard, which is Latin America.
I think
they're going to bring. They're
I
going
think
to
that's
bring them
almost too
to.
late for them.
Huh? You think it's too late?
I think that's almost too late. Yeah.
You got to do it because it's your backyard.
Now, why do they have to worry about it?
If they don't control, if they don't have any control, they're pretty much surrounded. You know,
Yeah.
their southern flank is actually taken out.
That's exactly why when Trump was talking about killing NAFTA and basically pissing off the Mexicans, somebody sat him down and said, "Come on, here, look at this. What do you think is going to happen if you cast Mexico to the wind, put them out on the curb? Who do you think is going to pick them up?
China, Russia.
China's already there. Who do you think is going to take over? And then what do you have?
China at your doorstep.
Who's going to be at your doorstep?
China.
I said. That's why I said he can't be this dumb. Just can't be.
So he got to really appease China, not China. Why say China? Mexico, Canada, and Latin America.
He needs to. They're probably going to have to do something about Venezuela because that's going to be immediate. I do believe that it's going to be the next stomping ground, which is Venezuela. They need Venezuela desperately.
Now, remember we went over how Colombia was supposed to be joining NATO, and we speculated that they're going to use Colombia as a proxy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say destabilize Venezuela because Venezuela's economy is already destabilized, but to do something
to put it's temporarily it's temporarily destabilized because of the sanctions. But once they move into a crypto state, then it's already game over because they already got $25 to $30 billion in investment.
In crypto, it's backed up with oil. It's backed up with oil. Yeah, it's backed up with oil. Yeah, it's gonna be them getting out of this box is gonna be interesting. That's like my chastised Kirigakari Jones talking about isolationism is going to save the United States.
No, it's not because that allows.
It depends on the context. It depends on the context that he's referring to.
No, he's talking about nationalism and isolationism.
Okay,
it's going to actually save the United States. Save them from what? You know, it's not going to put you back in a global game. It's not.
Because Mexico actually linked up with Cuba for oil deposits that were found out in the Caribbean, right outside of Cuba, and there's also heavy oil deposits outside of Haiti that the Venezuelans have been trying to help the Haitians actually broker that deal with Citgo.
You just think about it. This year you've lost Turkey, you lost Pakistan, and you lost India, and you may lose Korea in a year.
This is similar to the collapse of the Soviet Union. Could be Soviet Union 2.0.
And I mean, this is just a year. This would be a very bad year. And I was just saying in my video, I said, Trump. You know, I can't blame Trump because it was already a bad hand. It's a very bad hand that he has to play. So I can't completely blame him for what's going on. The thing is, you could play your bad hand better, in my opinion.
And now you got farmers committing suicide. I think I sent you the article.
Yeah, I read that.
Yeah,
you're gonna have a man.
You're gonna have to do a video on that. You're gonna have to do a video.
It's a mess, man. Well, it's not just the farmers, and then, man, just think when.
I sent you that
video. Let me ask you a question, Mike, because this is your bailiwick. How long do you think do you think cobots are a myth? And if they do bring in cobots, how long do you think they're actually going to go with cobots before they actually go to full-on automation?
In what context are you referring to?
Oh, in other words, we already know that for the vast majority of jobs, AI and basically robots, or you actually tune your factories to be automated, and for I would say at least 70% of the jobs. I mean, at a minimum.
Because there's a union in place in most of these facilities. Yeah. That's what's preventing the cobots from coming in. But once they start building out new facilities, those are going to be fully automated. Because if you look at the BMW mini plant, that is fully automated from top to bottom. There are no human beings in there. They make take a car every 7 minutes and 30 seconds.
So, and what I'm saying, if I know everybody's telling me that okay, cobots are the future. In other words, in your estimation, is a tech. If you just the cold hard punch, um, even if you bring in cobots, there's going to be an erosion. How long do you think it will be before they actually be? Let's say it's 70% automated in a factory. How long do you think the cobots will last, or the human beings will last in a factory?
About 5 years.
About 5 years? Man,
About 5
okay,
years.
less than you actually more.
Most factories already have cobots, right? So the initial next step would just be how long before they go with full robots. Because it takes time. They have to shut down the actual factory to replace those cobots with full robots, and that takes a little bit of time. So if they were going to actually do it, they would just do it in a whole new facility.
And like you said, the only thing that's holding them off is unions, because that's really the only thing that's keeping most automated trucks off the highway.
What's keeping automated trucks off the highway is actually infrastructure. They just don't have the infrastructure in place to actually do it. So the private companies like Tesla and Waymo and the rest of those companies would actually have to invest into the infrastructure. But most cities and states are bankrupt at this point. They can't afford to upgrade infrastructure, and most of the private companies don't want to invest into the infrastructure. So because it's already crumbling, you would have to do it all from scratch. That's why Arizona is such a Arizona and New Mexico are such great places to invest into, because
it's wide open.
It's wide open. And Africa would be a very, very lucrative place for autonomous driving and driverless vehicles, because the infrastructure hasn't been developed, so they can just do it from the ground up.
Yeah,
now,
they can go from scratch.
It's funny you all say build another facility, because I was talking to the other Mike Grizzly, and we were talking about automation and how you have these robots and
was it the Harley Davidson just did it, man?
Yeah, you have these robots in stores, and now it's gonna get to a point where you're just gonna have shelf reshelvers. But then he made a point. Well, at a certain point, I could just make a different type of shelf for the robots to load the little goods on the shelf, and just cut the reshelver out. And
the storage is different than the factory.
Yeah.
We're talking about the warehouses and stuff like that.
Yeah, just make another plant.
Yeah.
You know that store was it Little? I can't pronounce LIDL. It's like I don't know, Scandinavian or something. Well, they have you seen the chain I'm talking about? They're allegedly competing with Walmart. Anyway, they don't have shelves. They have like a pallet. Stuff comes off and whole big old store. They ain't got but maybe about 5-6 people working in the whole store, and it comes off the truck on a pallet. And it doesn't look like a warehouse the way that they designed the pallet, but there's no stocking. They don't have a storeroom.
Stores are going to go away with this whole same day shipping and all these little private logistic companies coming out, and Amazon Prime, all that going to the store and looking at a TV. You won't do that anymore.
And especially if you have automated vehicles, where basically it just you don't have a human being. You know, you have like a mother, let's say a mother truck, and it pulls up. It automatically drives up to your house, and a little robot gets out and drops the package on your porch or in your neighborhood, and gets back on and go to the next stop.
What do you call those distribution little pickup points they're now using at gas stations now?
Oh, you mean Amazon Locker?
There you go.
Locker, yeah.
Man, now Pizza Hut is going to try, flirting with that concept. It's like, I think we're going to see more of that.
Yeah, The thing is, what kind of mix are you going to get? Because you're going to have people doing something. Because
drive into the locker.
The thing is, there's no. What's going to happen to demand? People aren't working. You got to do something. That's where the UBI probably will have to come in, or some kind of mix will have to come in.
Oh, that's the only solution I can see is UBI.
Yeah, there's going to have to be a mix of something where people actually do some kind of work or some kind of trade or some kind of commerce. Because if not, then Yeah, if it goes beyond that, then it gets really scary, and I don't even like talking about that.
Well, that's why I brought up before, this idea of getting more innovation centers inside predominantly black areas,
Mhm.
and using them as places for where your millennials and your younger ones can actually have co-ops, tech co-ops set up where they can actually be working and actually have a stipend set up for them that would actually get them, the skills necessary while at the same time keeping them occupied and actually
The scary thing is how many people will you need?
because we don't manufacture anything. The only thing we could manufacture is code. So
Well,
that's kind of the whole purpose of it.
what I'm saying is, even at that, you will scale down your economy because you don't need human beings to actually keep your advanced economy going. How many human beings will you need? And then if you don't need that many human beings, what number do you need, and how will you scale your populations down? Will it be by force? Will it be by just attrition? What? And that's where the scary parts come in.
Well, you ask some of these brothers, if they've ever done a bank run, and they say they do bank runs every day.
Come on, bank runs.
When the economy collapses and you have to do a bank run, some of these brothers that you ask that question to, they say, "Oh, I do bank runs every day."
Oh yeah, they don't know what they're talking about. Yeah, they have no idea. They don't basically, and I was just saying this, a lot of your Xers and well hell, even your boomers,
Mhm.
we never been through that shit. We heard stories, but we never been through that shit. And so the Xers and the millennials really haven't. All they've known is fair weather. They've never been through anything. So when you talk about bank runs or depressions, they're like, "What are you talking about?" Well, it's not going to be that bad because we survived it. They don't think anything can happen.
Well, as a millennial, I've been through the tech. I was 18 with the tech thing,
That's a crash. That's not a depression.
and the 2008.
No, this is different.
No, this is no a bank run. The
Okay.
closest thing you can had a bank run. 2008 was the closest you ever came to a bank run, and they nipped that in the bud. A bank run is when everybody lines up and there's
Yeah.
no money.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I know what a bank run is.
Lionel, I have to point you to my chart from January of this year. No one alive has experienced what we get.
no, nobody alive. I'll tell you. I'll tell you the closest thing. What would happen during a bank shutdown or a bank holiday? You know, say say you go to get food, right? And normally you don't have money in your pocket. Normally you just use your card, right, Linnell?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Imagine you're in a store and all of a sudden you see this big long line, can't figure out why. It's
Mm.
because the cards have stopped working, the banks have shut down, and nobody can get to their money. So your next move is your card doesn't work. Let me run down to my bank and do what? Get what?
Get money.
Get cash, right? And you go down to your bank, and next thing you know,
It's a long line.
it's like it's like a 3 and 4 block line to get in and get your money. And you hope that you're far enough up to before they actually run out of money because it used to be um,
Yeah, they
e-
need to
for
keep.
every digital dollar
Yeah, they need
is
that same
$1.
physical dollar in the bank,
But
but now they
now it's 1 in 30.
right.
Might be
They
more or
only they
less
only
than
they
that.
only they only keep $20,000 in each ATM.
Oh, well, I'm talking about the bank inside the bank because people gonna be lined up outside the bank to get all their money out.
Well, they tested that in Cyprus last year, right? Remember, people in Cyprus tried to go to the bank and pull out their money, and that didn't work out too well because
It's not there.
it wasn't there.
It's not there. What do you think is gonna happen in the United States, which is what 20 times the size of Cyprus? And,
Yeah.
and before, in the old days, it had to be word of mouth. But now you have Twitter and Facebook, and all it takes is one guy that said my card was rejected, and basically my bank is shutting down.
It's
How
just
long
gonna
do you think
spread like wildfire.
how long do you think the panic would take for that panic to happen?
Yeah, I think people need to think about their PayPal and their Square Cash and start stashing money in all those different
Yeah,
places.
yeah. And I said if it ever happens, I said the people asked me, said, "What is it? Was it gold? Is it for? Well, you need gold?" I said, "No. First thing you need is I said your first for the first 3 weeks. I said physical cash. whatever the coin of the realm is. I don't care if it's nickels, dimes, or pennies. Whatever the coin of the realm is, it'll be king. And when that runs out, then you start trading your gold and your silver and whatnot. But the thing is, for the until the system gets set up to accept gold and silver and verify of its worth, and that's going to take a while. That's not going to be immediate. People will accept cash first. So I said, keep cash on you. And I said, at the very least, keep your coins, because I got coins, because those will be worth something. Because a lot of people ain't gonna have it.
That big Coca-Cola bottle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Your coins will be worth something. If nobody else has money, you got a quarter. Guess what? Got something to trade.
King.
Yeah, you king. Yeah.
I want to show you guys something. If you want to do it now, just on the charts. I want to go back to oil real quick, not long.
Mm-hmm.
Let me.
I know you want to keep the hangout going. You want to.
This ain't gonna be long. This gonna be real. I think the people need. I would like the people to see this. It's not gonna be long. It's real short. I just wanted to point to this section here. First of all, this is a monthly chart of U.S. oil fund. This trend line represents like the last year. I just wanted to point out how we're sitting right on this support. Right now, we don't have, if we take out whatever this low is for this month, we should have some trouble, because what's concerning me is we are over bought. Okay, I know that's a monthly, but that's just something to keep an eye on. And here we have Exxon, that long line I've been watching since 2002. It's like a 16-year support line. But the part I want everybody to notice is here. This is a weekly chart. So this peak here is the January high. Then we fell, then we bounced up, and we see down here on the stochastic that we are in overbought territory, and it has flipped. So you put a trend line right here, and so if we basically go below the low of this week, that should be enough to break the trend line. And we'll see. You keep a look on things, because if this trend line breaks right here, we talking again. This is a 16-year trend line. That's no joke. So we'll see.
There's only so much the United States can do to bring back money to actually support the dollar with interest rates before you actually do damage to the economy.
Right. So I just want to make sure everybody keep an eye on that. Don't believe the hype when you hear the news on a day-by-day basis when they say, oil is up $3 a day, or even if it's Bitcoin or anything. Don't believe the hype on a day-by-day basis. Look on the charts to see in a relative sense what does today's move mean, because the media will make you think everything's good just because of what something did today. So get perspective, look at the charts, get some perspective.
And we normally do, the after hangout, but I'm gonna end the hangout, the broadcast. Don't forget to come Friday for Money Making Friday. We got some good topics we're gonna talk about. Any other
space hangout?
Yeah, and Saturday we got our black people in space hangout. So
hopefully Friday we can make room for Bitcoin. I want to talk about the fact that Bitcoin dropped below it did tip its toe below that low of 5,900. So it's not to be trusted. And I would like to maybe talk about that a little bit more.
I haven't looked at the Bitcoin chart in a minute. I might have to look at it.
Yeah, it's not to be trusted.
So with this, I'm gonna stop the broadcast, and y'all have a good day.
All right.